Hi, everyone. So we're about to get started soon. Okay. I wanted to thank you all for joining us today. We wanted to welcome everyone to the Trauma Resilience Team's first ever conference. I'm glad so many people took the time to join us on this Saturday morning. Coping with the secondary effects of the pandemic, dealing with grief and loss, has been something I've been working on for the past couple of months. As a case and contact investigator, I was able to get a glimpse into the lives of people directly affected by COVID-19. I knew the pandemic would be devastating to our communities and to our loved ones. And that's why I chose to focus on grief and loss, because it can be a difficult thing to talk about, especially when the ways of mourning and healing from those that are lost were not safe to practice because of the pandemic. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we go any further. Let's quickly cover some of the housekeeping rules. Because we're recording this to upload for public viewing later, we ask that while the presenters are presenting or when a question is being answered, to make sure that you stay on mute, be respectful of one another and to the speakers. And please be advised that if you go on camera, it will be a recording, even if it's on accident. We will be having a Q&A panel at the end of the conference where more in-depth questions will be answered, but we will also be having a few minutes in between the speakers for audience to ask clarifying questions. We ask that you submit your questions in the chat box, as we will be having someone go through and pick out your questions. You can also send them directly to her. Her name is Verna Lilly, and she is the TRT lead. We ask that all attendees take a moment after the event to complete an evaluation form. We want to use your feedback to improve our events in the future. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to send a private chat to IT Chelsea, and it's spelled CHELSEY. If you have any technical difficulties, please know that we are recording this conference and it will be available soon, so you will be able to view the parts that you missed. If you have any problems, please try logging out and logging back into the meeting. Before we go over the poll results, a quick thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to our own agency, the Pierce County Medical Reserve Corps, for supporting and encouraging the Trauma Resilience Team for creating this event. Thank you to the Rainier Olympic Nurses Association for donating their time, expertise, and resources that help make this event possible. And thank you to the Pierce County Department of Emergency Management for providing the ASL interpreters for this event. And I just want to do a quick land acknowledgement. Here in Pierce County, we live on the land that was originally the Puyallup tribe. And I just want to recognize that we are living on their land. So the poll results. Okay. Can everyone see the poll results? Yes. Okay. So the first one, only 3% said that they had COVID. 50%, about half of you said that you had someone close to you. And 48%, so almost half of you also said that you knew someone that had COVID. And only 17% said that they didn't know anyone. For the second one, if you lost someone to COVID, a few of you said that you have lost someone very close, and about 28%, about a quarter of you said that you have lost someone in your social circle. And then about the same number have lost someone as an acquaintance, so someone in your, your realm. And then the third one, financial stability. Most of you said that you hadn't had, financial stability issues. And then only some of you said that you had financial issues for other unspecified reasons. 30% of you said that you were working remotely with children. And then 17% said that no, that wasn't your case. And then 50%, about half of you, said that this does not apply to me. For those of you who have been dealing with grief, 40% said that yes, I've been doing well in my coping strategies. 50% said that I am doing okay, but you could do better. And then 7% said that I haven't dealt with my grief. And I just wanted to let you guys all be able to see that. I don't know. Is it shared on the screen?
The poll, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can say stop sharing if you want to close it. Share results, you already did that. Or
Okay.
you're, as a co-host, we're still seeing it. You can just, where it says share results, click it, and then it'll say stop or something like that. Because it hadn't stopped yet.
Okay, so I just want to introduce our first speaker, Heather Stang. We would now like to welcome her. Heather is a thanatologist, a mindfulness speaker, and author of the Mindfulness in Grief with guided meditations to calm your mind and restore your spirit. Her focus on teaching others to use mindfulness-based techniques to reduce stress, cope with grief, and accumulate personal growth is inspired by her own journey of love, loss, and post-traumatic growth. She is best known for using present moment awareness to relieve suffering, coping with, and eventually re-engaging with life after loss. She offers online grief support and grief coaching using mindfulness-based practices and principles of yoga therapy. Learn more about Heather in the link provided in the chat. Now I'll let Heather take it from here.
There, my finger wasn't clicking quick enough to unmute. Thank you so much, Samantha, for that wonderful introduction. And while I wish none of us needed to be here, I'm so glad that we are all here. As many of you probably experienced when the clock struck midnight on January 1st, 2020, many of us had high hopes for what the new year might bring. We always have that symbolic, fresh new start, no matter what's going on. It's kind of a cultural thing, right? But we also had expectations that weren't so high and grand. We thought we'd be able to go to the grocery store without a mask. In fact, we didn't even think about putting on a mask. We thought about being able to hug our loved ones, to show up in our normal office, to be by the side of people we cared for in times of joy and in times of sorrow. These are just a few of the concepts that make up our assumptive world. And no matter what category, what box you checked during the poll, whether you didn't know anyone with COVID or whether you lost loved ones, we are all impacted. As you probably know, trauma happens when you experience something overwhelming that either happens to you or that happens to others. And globally, we have all been witnessing the pain and suffering of our fellow humans. So during this time, I want to just talk to you about the intersection of loss, grief, and the pandemic, because it's created a space for a different type of grief, a type of grief that doesn't get to be socially expressed in the ways that it used to be. But first, let's talk about how we are impacted as a society from the pandemic. And none of this will come as a surprise. You know, we have pervasive social isolation, unemployment, loneliness, financial insecurity. There's an uptick, heartbreakingly, in domestic violence. Gun and alcohol sales increased, suicide rates went up. There's a general anxiety disorder is more prominent. Phobias, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. attachment disorders. I don't want to list all this out and make you feel overwhelmed. I want to give you some hope for this, but I also want to normalize that if you experienced any of these, you're not alone. That's not to diminish your pain, but it's to let you know that part of why you're here is to get the support and the resources to deal with this. I also wanted to list these things out, even though we kind of know what's going on because we're well into this, because a lot of these bullet points contribute to complicated, and actually, let's scratch that word. We'll say prolonged grief disorder. It makes our mourning journey even harder when we can't connect to the normal social supports, when we have an extra layer of general anxiety disorder because we don't know if we're going to lose our job or if a loved one is going to get sick. So we're in this incubator where grief is extra hard. And early on in the pandemic, there is a researcher by the name of Sherman Lee who worked with Dr. Niemeyer, one of my mentors, to create a pandemic anxiety scale or coronavirus anxiety scale. And these are the 4 symptoms that really showed up as prevalent in people who were feeling overwhelmed by the coronavirus pandemic. These are also things that show up with grief. And so there can be an exponential amount of suffering. So feeling dizzy, lightheaded, or faint, just being exposed to the news about the virus, having trouble falling asleep, insomnia, which many of us already had even before the pandemic, but for many it got exacerbated. Feeling paralyzed or frozen. We talk about the fight or flight response. And then, a few decades ago, we found out it's the fight or flight and then freeze response. That paralysis or feeling like you can't do anything, or even a physical sense of stuckness, can contribute to trauma and complications with mourning. And of course, losing interest in eating when you thought about or was exposed to information on the coronavirus. I personally experienced overeating. I don't know if, again, this was early on in the pandemic. I wonder if that shifted, but these are what the researchers put out. I think a lot of us experienced a shift in how we consumed food. Some of us couldn't handle it because our nervous system was on overdrive, and some of us it's all we wanted to do because it gave us comfort. But here's what I want to say, and this is a quote from Dr. Lee. Coronavirus anxiety is something that can impact any one of us, caregivers and patients alike. It presents a lot like generalized anxiety disorder and tends to manifest as physiological complaints, which I've listed. These physiological complaints, as I mentioned before, often show up when we're grieving. As a thanatologist, which means I have a master's degree in death, dying, and bereavement, so I've really studied it, we're very careful about our words because we want to be clear. We used to use the word grief, and many still do, as a death-related loss, a specific type of loss. During the pandemic, it feels like this has shifted, and that is totally fine. So we'll sometimes talk about death related loss or, non death related loss. But whatever you call it and whatever word you use, and this is from one of my colleagues, and I love his definition: grief is the loss of anything we hold dear. Grief is the loss of anything that we hold dear. It can be a loved one, it can be a pet, it can be a job, it can be your assumptive world, it can be the freedom to move about without fear. Grief shows up in many ways. And yes, death related loss is very specific because it doesn't ever reverse. Some non death related losses can reverse. You might still have some residual pain and trauma, but some are more temporary than others. Today, I want to invite you to put aside any hierarchy and just focus on your loss, because the loss that's most important is the loss that has impacted you. And the person that you have the most control over helping with loss is you. And so we put our oxygen mask on first and don't disenfranchise our own grief. So, what are some of the symptoms and challenges of grief? If you haven't been through a major loss, and I'm going to just take responsibility myself for, times where I didn't completely understand what someone else was going through. Even though my first loss was when I was 7 years old and my uncle died by suicide, I didn't grasp it in the same way that maybe I do now. So we're not always aware of the different ways that grief impacts us. Yes, we kind of expect that people are going to feel sad and maybe they cry, maybe they don't. More on that in a moment. But we don't always take into account that grief or loss manifest as physical sensations in the body. That can be pain, headaches, that feeling of hollowness in the stomach, in addition to things like emotions, sadness, anger, rage, depression. We also don't often think about behaviors, lashing out at other people, maybe not the skillful, most skillful way to cope, but as someone who went through a traumatic loss, I've yelled at a police officer who kindly let me express my grief, and I hope someday to find him and apologize. We're very irritable. We're forgetful, and we might behave in ways that aren't particularly healthy, overeating or drinking too much or turning to drugs, isolating. So, one thing to maybe track for you and those you support, in addition to the body, the physical body, the emotions you expect to show up too, are behavioral changes. Sometimes we withdraw from our social supports or don't rely on the coping skills that we already have. That kind of leads to the social changes. There's some people we want to be around because they bring us support. And there are other people we do not want to be around because they just don't get it. Or maybe they say something hurtful. Or maybe if we're around someone who hasn't experienced a major loss, it reinforces our own loss as we witness what they still have and what we miss. Cognitions can include thoughts about your loved one or your life before the pandemic. Just simple things like remembering a vacation or remembering what it was like to go to an office party over the holidays that you no longer get to go through. It can also be a felt sense of the presence of a loved one, which I am grateful I get to hear and see that with the group that I work with, signs that show up where people feel like they're still connected to their loved one. So cognitions aren't always bad. Sometimes they bring comfort, sometimes they bring more distress. And then, of course, existential, spiritual, and religious challenges. How do I fit into the world now that this has happened? What is my view of my religious beliefs? Sometimes people become more involved in their religious or spiritual community. Sometimes it changes completely. So, just taking into account this holistic impact that grief and loss has on us. And let's talk about, how do we move through it? I am not someone who believes that grief ever ends. There's no end point. I will say that the intensity and the frequency of the pain does get spaced out. And I often hope that people can move to a place where thinking about their loved one or their life before brings them at least just a little smile to the face, even if there are also tears. As humans, we're able to hold multiple emotions in our hands. But if you're in acute grief, if you're in the early period of tending to your loss, even if your loss was a long time ago, if you're just now facing it, that idea of feeling joy about your loved one or having good memories might not be accessible, and that's okay. Be patient with yourself. I know that culturally there's a lot of talk about the 5 stages of grief, and I won't go on, but thanatologists know that the research does not support those 5 stages, even though we bow deeply to Dr. Kubler-Ross and all the work she did for the dying patient. That's not to say that people don't experience the feelings that are in those 5 stages, but there is a lot more to it. It's not a linear or progressive type of experience. A lot of us do subscribe to these more task-based systems of mourning, and there are several of them out there that are really solid, that are grounded in research and experience. And one of my favorites, and one of the, I think, most concise to explain, is William Worden's 4 tasks of mourning. This can be applied to death and non-death loss. The first thing we do is process the pain of grief. For anyone who has gone through a major loss, you know how hard this is. I mean, sometimes you feel like if you start crying, you might implode. And so you hold back the tears. But you have to go through it to get to, I'll just say, the next task rather than saying the other side, because I want to be honest in saying that we're always going to miss what we no longer have. And by the way, these tasks are also not in a specific order. It's not like you necessarily go through all 4 in this order, but I think a lot of people do. You might go back and forth. And I also want to say people process pain in different ways. I mentioned earlier that we often expect people to cry, but what about those people that don't cry or that don't show emotion? Is there something wrong with them? Absolutely not. Those are what we call instrumental grievers. There's a continuum. There's those of us on the one side, and I'm over here, which is actually unusual for a thanatologist, where I cry and wail and I have the ugly face and the snot flying, and it's like very emotional. There's no question I'm grieving. And then on the other end, there are people who maybe process loss a little more cognitively. When they hear the 4 tasks of mourning, they go, ah, this makes sense. That's not to say that us intuitive grievers on the crying side don't also enjoy some instrumental processing, and vice versa. It's a continuum. Nobody's just one or the other. But know that if you are not crying and it's not in your nature to cry, it's okay. You're probably processing your loss in a different way. And if you are someone who is crying all the time, that's normal too, until it isn't, which I'll touch on briefly in a few moments. So, processing the pain of loss, letting yourself feel it, adjusting to a world without the deceased. I think that my next one, I just realized, is the same thing: to adjust to a world without the deceased. I apologize for that. We process the pain of loss, we adjust to the world without the deceased, and then we find an enduring connection with the person in the midst of embarking on a new life. And the third one, I apologize, I am blanking out. I normally try to be perfect, but I am not. Um, process the pain of loss. I'm going to come back to that. I will get that to you, make sure it's correct in the slides. But what I want to make sure I have time for is to talk about, why do people process grief in different ways? What's going on? There's a thing that Bill Warden calls the mediators of mourning. And these are how we are related to the person who died, the nature of the attachment, how they died. So the intensity and the duration of loss is going to be correlated to how dear we hold that person near us, or that that job or the money or whatever else it is that we've lost. How close we hold it is going to probably be correlated to how intensely we grieve it. And in addition to that, what are our coping skills? What are our supports? Are we financially stable? Do we have pre-existing mental health challenges that make it hard for us to adjust to change? There's so many different things that go into the different ways that we grieve. Another thing that goes into it are personality variables, age and gender, coping style, our cognitive style. Are we someone who processes things logically, or are we more emotive, which goes back to that instrumental and intuitive griever? Our social variables. What type of support do we have around us? And if we're missing things like social support, if we're feeling isolated, if we have few financial resources, and in addition to dealing with the loss, we're also having to work 2 jobs to support our family, and we're battling general anxiety disorder or coronavirus anxiety, then it's possible that we are at risk for what's called prolonged grief disorder. Now, I want to be really careful talking about this because sometimes people self-diagnose and say, "Oh, I've had many clients come to me and say, 'Oh, I have complicated grief disorder.'" And I'm not seeing any signs of it. I'm seeing what a normal grief experience, whatever that is. Even that word normal grief kind of makes me cringe a little because grief is really, really hard. Um, but it's important to know. Oh, Suzanne, thank you. Thank you so much. She just gave me number 3, to adjust a world without the deceased. I appreciate you popping that up for me. But coming back to prolonged grief disorder, this is something that can be treated. And so I think there's a problem with the word prolonged grief disorder because it sounds like you're not grieving right, that there's something wrong with you. But we all know that there are traumas that are just so overwhelming. How do we bear it? So there is, I believe, no shame in this. And the good thing is there is a really good treatment protocol that helps you become more attuned to your experience of the loss. It's a trauma sensitive treatment. But these are some of the things that you want to be aware of for you or people that you care for. Because if you start to see these things, then normal grief interventions may not be helpful and might need a little more help. So if the grief symptoms intensify chronically over time rather than abating, I'm not talking about in the first 3 or 6 months or even a year. It used to be that 6 months was like the cutoff, but now we're talking more like a year or longer, depending on the intensity of the loss. But if it's 5 years down the road and every day for 5 years, it's been like day one, then it's a good, maybe even before that, it's good to get some professional support from a grief therapist. If it's increasingly debilitating, if you are unable to function on a day-to-day basis, if disbelief lingers, or you're imagining the person is alive, painful yearning for the deceased, we're going to feel that on and off throughout our lifespan. But if it's, again, all day, every day for a very long period of time, intrusive images of the person who died. And again, this is something we need to take mindfully into consideration. When my stepfather died suddenly, I had intrusive images on and off for the first 3 months. They eventually subsided after I did my own work with myself, moving my body, focusing my attention on a tennis ball that I hit against a wall over and over, doing things that I knew could help with trauma. But if, a year or 2 later, those are still coming up, it's good to get the right intervention for that. Desperate loneliness, anger, bitterness, a death wish. Again, taking this with a grain of salt that is time and work done, we're going to feel that during the period of acute grief. And then if the griever spends the majority of their time contemplating the death, longing for reunion, um, and unable to imagine life without the person. We looked at that fourth task of mourning, which is to embark on your new life while maintaining an enduring connection with the person who died. We're always going to remember them. And somebody popped in, Elizabeth said, I agree that the experience of grief moves and changes, but it doesn't end. It doesn't end, nor does your relationship with your loved one. It will continue, and you will continue to imagine conversations, and you will continue to imagine what they would say to you in a given circumstance, and that's normal. It's okay to talk about them. It's okay to imagine what it would be like if they were here today and how they might treat you. All right. Okay, so Suzanne, I apologize, you all. I talk about wardens work all the time, and it's the foundation for what I do. I'm a little embarrassed, but I know I'm with compassionate people. You know what it is. So I've skipped the first one. The first thing we do is accept the reality of the loss. There we go. That usually takes a few days for most of us, but it might be a couple weeks later and you're still picking up the phone to call them, or the phone rings and you think it's there. Again, that's normal in the first period of grief, but then eventually you start to realize that they're not here, which is, by the way, really hard. Then you process the pain of the loss. Then you adjust to the world without them, and then you build that enduring connection. Thank you so much for helping me with my presentation. All right. So let's move into developmental perspectives, because Warden's 4 steps, they work for every age, but there are age appropriate ways of talking about grief. And I have a resource. If you go to that link in the bottom of the slides, I put up my slides. I also put up some books for those of you who want to know more. And one of those books, if you are working with a child who is bereaved, particularly if their parent died, Bill Warden did a longitudinal study with bereaved children, and that book is amazing. So it's Developmental Perspectives of Loss. From age 3 to 5, death is a physical relocation and they exist somewhere else. Sometimes this is in heaven, but they might be able to come back if they're 3 to 5, or maybe they think that, someone has gone away. For any of us who had a parent tell us that a dog went to live on the farm, and it wasn't until my first day in my thanatology's master's that I found out that was a euphemism for death. I literally thought that my granddad's dog lived on a farm. And so acknowledging that kids hear what you say, and when they're really little, they might take you very literally. But as they get older, they're going to start to read between the lines. As you probably know, kids are smart, and you can tell them one thing, but they're watching your behavior, they're overhearing conversations. And so after I go through these age related things, I want to briefly touch on how to talk to them. So from age 5 to 9, death is often seen as personified, where it's something you can avoid, like the Grim Reaper, like there is a death thing, and you can, very superstitiously avoid dying. And then 9 to 10 is around where the concept of death becomes more concrete, that it's irreversible, that it's inevitable, that they don't come back, which is also hard. So, talking to children, don't try to pretend the death didn't occur. Use questions, ask them questions and see what they want to know. Let them tell you what they think and then fill in the blanks as appropriate. If they have too many of their own unanswered questions, and I was a 7-year-old child whose uncle died by suicide, I don't have time to go into the whole story of what I thought, but it was not what really happened because no one was giving me information. So I created information. And this is true with many young children. They will fill in the blanks, and it's often worse than what really happened. Be honest without being overwhelming. Give them opportunities to memorialize their person or their pet, maybe through a drawing, maybe through a ritual, through conversation, maybe through volunteering. Age appropriate volunteer opportunities, such as, walking in a short walk that benefits what the person died from, or well, there's so many there. I could list things on and on, but age appropriate opportunities for volunteering. One of the most helpful things is to find a place where a child can connect with another child who's had the same loss. And I'm thinking in the resources section, hopefully there will be some resources for that. If you want to go online, there's the Dougie Center in Portland, Oregon, which has really great online resources for children. And understand finally that children may oscillate very quickly between grief and play. Whereas adults, we tend to just feel our grief and then we don't turn on a dime and suddenly we're happy and not even thinking about it. Children go back and forth. That's part of being a child. So know that that's normal. Survival skills for grief for children and adults. Find ways to cope with your pain. And by coping, I mean on the spot techniques that you can do to either shift your mood or address what's hurting that's skillful and helpful. It might just be placing your hand on your heart, taking a breath, and saying, "This is hard, but I'm doing my best." Building your resilience. What I mean by that is regular self care activities, short ones every day, maybe a little longer ones every week. You're going to get to try or see a demonstration of yoga for grief in a little bit. And that's a great way to build resilience as well as coping with the pain. Going for regular hikes, moving your body, eating healthy, all these things you can do to tend to your physical self are going to help you with your emotions as well. As are doing things like journaling and processing your story of loss. And then finally, getting loving support is huge. And again, this is why the pandemic has been so hard, is because we don't have the same type of loving support. But thank goodness we can get online like this and connect with each other in a way that is supportive. And finally, I want to leave us with a little bit of hope. I know talking about grief and loss and facing your own grief and loss is really hard. So please be gentle with yourself. And if you're really early in your loss, what I'm about to share with you may not feel accessible at all. So just put it in the back of your mind and don't worry about it. Cultivating post traumatic growth is not something you force, it's something that unfolds. So many people who've experienced a trauma, whatever kind of trauma, death, loss, job loss, I'll say life limiting illness where you recover. Many people on the other side experience some, maybe one, maybe all of these five things: an increased sense of personal strength. Again, if you're in the early days, you may feel beaten down and worn down. Don't worry about it. This will come. Awareness of new possibilities. There are many of us doing volunteer work because of our own losses. Improved compassion for yourself and for other people who are suffering. Appreciation for life in general, where you actually start to savor the little things and see the bigger picture and the tapestry of life, where you walk through nature and take a deep breath and actually appreciate what you see around you. And spiritual change or growth. Again, sometimes your spiritual or religious practices are going to be really supportive and adaptive through loss. sometimes you will find other things. And whether it's religion or just finding who you are now and your place in the world, many people who've gone through a loss experience this type of existential reframing. And finally, I want to share this quote from Anne Frank. I find it amazing that up in that attic, moments before everything was going to fall apart, she was able to hold this mindset. I feel the suffering of millions. And yet, when I look up at the sky, I somehow feel that everything will change for the better, that this cruelty too shall end, that peace and tranquility will return once more. I hope that for us, I hope that those words resonate with you. But when you feel like all hope is gone, just take a breath and turn towards yourself and treat yourself with kindness and compassion, because this time period has been really hard, but we are surrounded by people who care on this call today. And I wish you peace and I wish you hope. And I look forward to questions at the end. And thank you again for supporting me during my awkward slide moment. I appreciate it. And I don't know if there's time for questions after this.
We have just one.
Heather, we don't have time, so we'll bring up the question that we did have at the end
Okay,
during
great.
the panel. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heather, for sharing your wisdom with us this morning.
You're welcome.
Our next speaker is Josie Hansen. She is an RN, a grief yoga movement facilitator, and certified health coach. Josie's journey led her to obtain her Bachelor of Science in Sociology, her medical massage therapy license, and she became a registered nurse. To balance life stresses and challenges, she has become a certified yoga teacher through her Vinyasa practice in 2019. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, she realized grief has become a dominant byproduct. So to assist and support people to find their wisdom, guidance, and healing in the process of grief through yoga, she has earned a grief yoga movement certification. Most recently, she has completed an inaugural certified grief educator course by grief expert David Kessler. Now hand it over to Josie.
Okay. Good morning. Welcome, everyone. In my notes, I just have a little bit about grief to start, but I'm going to just say that thank you, Heather, for just covering that so beautifully and so eloquently, and I appreciate that. What I really did resonate, though, with the quote that you had by Jack Jordan: "It is the loss of anything that we hold dear," and it's so true. So just a couple of bullet points here about yoga for those of you that may not be familiar with what is yoga. It's a Sanskrit word for to yoke or to bind or to create union. And what we are unifying is the mind, the body, and the spirit. That's the intention behind yoga. And yoga also contributes to our remembering that part of us to be connected with something that is greater than we perceive of our individual self. It is not a religion, it is a spiritual practice. And with that, it can also support and augment any particular religion that you happen to follow or practice. So why grief yoga? What is that? And so grief yoga is a specific type of yoga that's really designed to find some powerful ways to move through pain, anxiety, fear, self-doubt, and loss. It also provides the opportunity to create shifts in our life, even after loss. And it helps people to find what is really true for them, because the body is what speaks the truth. The body holds all the messages of our life, everything that's ever happened, whether we remember it consciously or unconsciously. So we can tap into some of that. It creates a different kind of pathway to express our emotions. It acknowledges that when we suppress our emotions, whether it's sadness or anger or guilt or shame, other emotions like joy and peace and happiness and love can also get suppressed. I sometimes think of it as we tap into some of those more uncomfortable emotions. It's like, and process them. It's like taking out the couch in the living room. We have to get rid of that one before we can get the new one in place. It engages our brain in ways that helps us to feel more connected and uplifted. And it's a really powerful stress management coping tool. And yeah, there's a few more bullet points, but let's dive in. What do you say? So I'm gonna move my microphone so you have a little bit better audio. And start. So today's practice, everything will be from the chair. And so hopefully you have a sturdy, non-movable chair, or if you do have a chair that has wheels, somehow make that safe for yourself, okay? So today's practice is we're going to be tapping into our courage, and with courage we're going to be facing our fears and building a little bit of resilience along the way. The practice will be about 25 minutes long as well. So fear, as you may or may not know, it can often leave us feeling stuck. It can feel lost. It can create uncertainty within ourselves. Heather mentioned that experiencing fear can often lead us to feeling those emotions like we want to fight, or we want to flight, we want to leave, or we can even feel frozen. Yet the beautiful thing is that when we learn to befriend our fear as it arises, as it comes up, because it will, you can turn that fear into healing. You can use it as fuel for greater understanding, greater self-wisdom, greater self-compassion, and courage. So let's begin. One last thing I need to do so I stay on time for myself. Okay. So let's begin by maybe scooching a little bit forward on your chair and planting your feet on the floor. Shifting your weight from side to side, back and forth to find your center. As you find your center, begin to breathe in through your nose and maybe out through your mouth with a sigh. Your sigh may have some sound. Sometimes it feels really good to add a little sound and no one can hear you. You're all on mute. So here we go. That sigh may sound different than the first one. So here we go. One last one. This time, maybe add the words here on your inhale and now on the exhale. Here, now, oftentimes our emotions and our thoughts can kind of get stuck in the neck area because the body contains so many emotions. So I really like to begin by opening our neck just a little bit. So allow one ear to move towards your shoulder. And remember, I am just your guide for today's practice. You are your own guide. So listen intently to the messages that your body may be sending you. And if anything feels too uncomfortable, it's okay to just back off. And if you just want to sit and watch, that's totally okay too. Letting your chin come towards your chest, continuing to breathe, and then allow the other ear to go to the other shoulder. And perhaps back down towards center and towards the other ear. Maybe gaze your center gaze up towards the sky. You have a flashlight on the top of your head. Being kind to yourself here. One more time in the opposite direction as we loosen up. Inhale, squeeze your shoulders up towards your ears. They might already be living there. Inhale deeply and exhale, release it, shake it off. Inhale deeply again, squeeze those shoulders up, maybe even want to bring your hands up. Squeeze your eyes, squeeze everything real tight. Exhale, release, shake it off. One more time. Inhale, squeeze, 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 and release, shake it off. Even though we did a little release there with our shoulder, sometimes we hold a lot of tension and pain. Maybe it's in your shoulders, maybe it's in your abdomen, maybe you have headaches. So wherever it is that you feel a little discomfort or pain, maybe bring your attention to that. Bring a hand to it. Where is it on you? And just notice, how does that feel? How is that tension? And as you become aware of that, just notice and go ahead and release. We're going to begin now to bring some oxygen into the body and create a little spark of fuel here. Many of us, as we were kids, we did this pretended we were conducting an orchestra, right? So we were like dancing along like this, listening to the music. Well, we're going to do something like that. It's called the maestro breath, but we're going to add some breath to that. So we're going to do 3 quick inhales to 3 hand gestures. So, and then we're going to do an exhale. So inhale. In grief yoga, we make a lot of noise because in life, a lot of times we're not allowed to do that. So here we go, a couple more. Add some sound. One more. And shake it out. Continuing to add a little more breath and a little more oxygen here. We're going to do what's called a life pump. So here we interlace our fingers. Your right thumb goes down, your left thumb goes down, your hands and your arms are extended. When you inhale, lift your arms up. And as you exhale, bring your hands down and go at your pace. I'm just going to be your guide here. So inhaling. And know that, your movement might be this, and that's okay. You know your body. Maybe it feels better to exhale through your mouth. 5 more seconds. And shake it off. Notice how your body might begin to feel a little more enlivened. To add to that enlivenment, we're going to begin to invite you to begin to pat your body. You can pat your arms, up and down your arms, other arm, noticing how your hands make contact with your body. Begin to pat your tummy. Move around to the back side if you can. Maybe you can't, but that's okay. The outsides of your thighs. Perhaps to get your lower leg, you need to lift your leg. Maybe you can hinge at your hips and come down. Either way is okay. And then coming back to your tummy and ending. And pause. Notice, does your body have a little bit of a buzz now? How does it feel? Heather mentioned that sometimes with grief, we experience anger as one of our emotions. And sometimes there's a lot to feel angry about, and it's a normal, natural emotion. Often we wish there was a way that we could help, in a healthy way, process that anger. And this is a way to do that. So I'd like to invite you to bring your hands up by your chest, make fists, and we're going to just punch it out. So at your own pace, we're going to pretend that there's a punching bag in front of us, and we're going to punch. Whatever your pace is your pace, and it's good, and it's perfect. Hit that bag with determination. Because Lord knows there's a whole bunch to be angry about. And when you're done, take a big breath in and out, release. Now that we've started to warm up the upper body, let's do an inhale up. Bring your hands up overhead, touching our fingertips, letting it slide down as we exhale. Again, and maybe this is your movement, and that's okay. Inhale up. Bring our palms together to create balance as we come down to our heart center. And one more time. Inhale up. Let our hands come down to heart center. Let our hands slide out to our upper arms and give ourselves a little self-massage. It's a very natural movement to do this. It's very comforting. This is a tool you can take with you to use at any time when you might need a little comfort. While we're doing this, I'd like to invite you to think of something in your life that you would like to release. Maybe it's a relationship that isn't working anymore. Maybe it's a situation. Maybe it's stuff. Whatever it is that you, in your life, would like to release, just one thing. I'd like to invite you to bring that to your mind. We're going to go through a series of invitations here to help you to do that. I'd like to invite you to bring your hands, the back of your hands together, and your fingertips pointing down. as you bring the thing that you would like to release in your life to mind, envision it flowing off your fingertips, releasing down into Mother Earth, the core. She can use it as fuel to keep the world going. And once you have released it, bring your hands now to palms together in front of the chest. Here, I'd like you to think of what would you like to replace it with? You've released something. We always like to replace it with something. Then, keeping your lower palms, the heels of your hands together, your little finger together, and your thumbs together, so it looks like a little lotus. Yeah, the interpreter has a better picture than me, so thank you. So it's like an open flower. This is where we're going to invite you to receive the thing that you have requested. Bring that to the top of your head. Allow the thing you've requested to come in. And then back to heart center to rejoice. We're going to go through that 2 more times to really cement in that which you want to release, that which you want to request, that which you want to receive, the request that you want to receive, and to rejoice in receiving. One more time. Releasing, allowing the earth to burn the thing you want to release. Maybe it's an emotion. Maybe it's the anger. Heart center. Maybe inviting more love, more joy, whatever it might be, self-compassion. Receiving that. And then rejoicing. There's oftentimes thoughts that come through our mind like, if only, should have, could have, would have, whatever. And so with that, there's weeds. I think of those things as weeds. So we're going to pull some weeds. So if only I had done this, or if I would have done that, and throw that weed behind you. They should have done this. They could have done so much more. If only I'd done whatever. You can fill in the blanks because you have them. There's there's weeds, the could haves, the would haves. If only, that's a big one, right? And now that you've pulled up a lot of weeds, take a big breath in and big breath out. Pulling weeds can be kind of exhausting. Again, I like to think of things that we can replace once we've let go of some things, like those weeds. Envision a big trough in front of you, and that trough is full of courage. And so there's so much courage there, everybody can take gluttonous amounts of it. So with both hands facing forward, dig in to that big trough of courage and pull it in like you really mean it, like you're putting a lot of effort into it. Dig in. Make a sound when you bring it into yourself, from deep in your belly. Maybe ho is a better sound. There's big amounts there for everybody. Bring in that courage in case you need a little more. And when you're done, go ahead and just shake it off. Now I'd like to invite you to bring your right hand out and your left hand inside of your right, like you have an empty bowl. And take a breath in here, and as you gently blow out through your mouth, see if you can feel that cool breath on that empty bowl. As you're breathing into your bowl, I'd like to invite you to envision a time in your life where you've had to overcome an adversity, a challenge, something that really you were like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it through this, but you did. And put that into your bowl. And when you have that time in your bowl, I invite you to bring that up to your heart and let it melt into your heart. Let that strength, that courage, that resiliency that you had at that time just melt into your heart, and let your heart flow that courage throughout your entire body. Breathe it in and breathe it out. And I always like to have seconds on this, so I'm going to invite you to maybe come back for seconds as well. Have your bowl and think of a time. Maybe it's the same time because it was a big event. Maybe it's a different time that you want to fill your bowl with. Something that took a lot of strength, a lot of fortitude, wisdom. And when you have that, say yes. And bring that bowl to your heart. Maybe feel your heartbeat underneath your palm. Let all of that wisdom, that resilience, that courage, that strength melt into your heart and flow throughout. We're going to shift gears here a little bit with our bowl, because within the rainbow of emotions of life, laughter is one of them. Even in our time of sorrows and loss, sometimes there's a little humor in all of it. So this time, we're going to fill our bowl with laughing gas. Just pretend, just play along with me. It's okay to be silly, right? And if you're so courageous and it's within your reach, maybe even unmute yourself. So here we go. We're going to fill that bowl up with laughing gas. We're going to bring it up to our nose, and we're going to take a deep inhale. And just start laughing. I hear a couple of you. Let's go for more. It's good to be silly from time to time. And it's good to be silly collectively. Okay. Whew. Thank you so much for playing along. It feels good to laugh, yeah? Even if you're just pretending. Next, bring your hands, your fingertips to your chest. Begin to lightly tap your heart center with a few affirmations here that you might want to say along with me. I am strong. I am courageous. I am resilient. I am powerful. I'm scared. I'm sad. I sometimes feel overwhelmed. There's also planting the seeds of I am powerful. I am courageous. I am strong. I am a warrior. I am a love warrior. I have compassion for myself. I am love, and I am loved. Take a big breath in. You can leave your hands at your heart if you want, and bring them down to your lap. Take a big breath in, and a big breath out. Now I'd like to invite you to let your hands fall open, bringing your hands up over your head, however high that is for you. Let your fingertips come together. And like a French press, slowly bring your hands down over the body, over your eyes, over your nose, over your mouth. And let the air just come down over the body, very comforting. Inhale up again. And this time, envision that you've latched onto some white, bright, golden love, and let that just flow over you like warm honey, just wrapping you up, all that healing love, because it's out there and you've just tapped into it and you're washing yourself with it. And one last time, however high your arms go, tap into that loving light and just wrap yourself up like a warm blanket fresh out of the dryer, because it feels so good. And let that come down and release your hands down. Bring your hands back to the place that had some pain when we started. Maybe it was your head, maybe it was your tummy, maybe it was your shoulders. And notice, how does it feel now? And then let your hands slide down to your upper arms. Give yourself a little hug, a little massage, and release your hands down. Breath in, breath out, and notice how you feel. And with that, dear ones, the light and teacher in me sees the light and teacher in you, and I thank you for the honor of your time today. So, there you go. Thanks. And
Thank
I'm
you
so far away that I cannot read any of the comments in the chat. So,
Okay. I just wanted to thank you so much for walking us through that useful and unique meditation exercise. I just want to let people know we've uploaded resources into the chat. Josie has events in the coming weeks in the Gig Harbor area. So if you are interested in those, you can just click on those links. And let's see. I don't see any questions. So we will just take our 15-minute break right now. So at 10:35, we hope to see you back here just in time for our next presenter, Dr. Russ Peters. Thank you so much, Josie.
You are most welcome. Thank you. What time do we return?
10:35.
Thank you.
Where there's a really powerful chapter at the end.
Hi, everyone. I just want to give a few seconds. That way people know we're about to start again. Okay, so I just want to welcome everyone back. Our next presenter is Dr. Russ Peters. Dr. Peters has over 25 years of experience in crisis and trauma intervention and response. Since 2013, Dr. Peters has served as a crisis and trauma intervention chaplain and peer support team trainer for the Tacoma Fire Department. His goal is to serve the community and first responders and their families through providing counseling, training, complete guidance, emotional support, and comprehensive advocacy, as well as crisis support for individuals experiencing traumatic events, including assessment to evaluate needs and risks and planning for appropriate care. So now I hand it over to Russ.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you. I want to just really share my appreciation for our first two presenters and all that they had to share and just the resource. So thank you for very much for that. And also learning some new stuff myself today. So it's an honor and privilege to be with you. Just sharing with you something to remember through all this is that we all have stuff and we all are facing the last year and a half to 2 years, things we've never faced before. And so like you heard from, hope you've heard from the others, presenters, is give yourself a break, give yourself just the needed self-care. Today, my goal is just to share with you what practical things you can do when the grief or mental health comes up that's not being taken care of, to get the mental health, support you need, and mental illness comes up. And so I've broken it down into 3 things: immediate, present, and ongoing. So what I want to talk to you first about with immediate is what happens when someone you care about or someone you are taking care of. The first part, taking care of a family member or someone you come in contact with that is suffering effects of a mental illness that can be dangerous to themselves or to others. And so, of course, you want to dial 911. And a lot of people think, well, I don't want to get anybody in trouble. I don't want to cause something. But if it's especially a break that's happening, the mental illness, you want to do that so you can get the support and the stuff that they need. What first, as you see on the slide, is safety for yourself and for the other person. So that the more support, remember this in a mental illness, mental health crisis, is the more support you have, the better. So when you dial that, you will be asked police or EMS, emergency medical services. You want to go emergency medical services. Paramedics will come, unless, of course, there's physical danger involved. Let them know that. But the paramedics will call, and just a little bit about what happens then. When they get there, they're going to assess the situation. And here's the thing: is a lot of people sometimes expect, well, they're going to take the individual or my loved one or family member going through this. They're going to take them immediately to the hospital or to a clinic, and that's not necessarily going to happen, because first responder paramedics, they are not people that have the authority to commit individuals unless it's a voluntary. And sometimes if the person, because of their mental illness, is all physically is affecting them, then perhaps yes, they can take them for health and different things. And so, but many people get frustrated because why can't you take them? What's going on? Well, what needs to happen is an assessment. And also if the person is coherent and able to take care of themselves, they decide what is going to, the next step is going to be. Even if an individual is taken to a hospital or a clinic, if it's voluntary, they can check themselves out immediately. And that's, whether that is frustrating or different thing, that's just the way the system is, and it hope needs to be improved. So being prepared for what may happen, these decisions, and for various reasons that they may not be transported. And I just want to say is just take care of yourself. And sometimes it may be boundaries, but the thing to realize is that when you call, the frustration on first responders is that they cannot just go in and here you go, this person's going to be in a clinic or hospital for several days. That is up to the hospital staff and also the clinic and also the person if it's voluntary. Now, here's, even if the sad fact is if the individual is taken to a hospital clinic, or so that, yeah, that's what's going to happen, there may not be any beds available. And so that's another thing just to expect. So, well, this is kind of, not really helpful in the situation if that happens. So what I'm going to share with you is by calling 911, there is a record that's kept. And if an individual, several times, maybe they're called on or taken to the hospital, there'll be records. And so that awareness. So just backing up, I just want to give you the practical stuff of what happens, because many first responders, unless there's life threatening situations that come up, they're not going to take someone because they cannot commit them unless it's also a health issue too that's affecting them, and they can take them to the hospital. But I do want to share with you is to please don't just, I'm not going to do anything. Is call 911. The more support you have, the better. And that's kind of what happens if you come in contact, if a loved one or someone is having a really serious effect of their mental illness, which may endanger themselves or others. And so that is immediate. The more support people have, empathy and compassion, our first responders and the hospitals, and they do what they can. And also it may be something, if you can, but very few can, do have a private care plan in place that for them, if the person's willing to go into that. But once a person gets into a hospital clinic, if they're admitted, then the other thing you need to realize is that if they are not incapacitated mentally, that they're not going to release any information to you. If you're just a friend or an acquaintance, if you're not next of kin, or if permission's not given. So these are some things I want to prepare you for. If you have someone that you're close to, you're caring for someone with mental illness and some things come up, 911, your first responders are there for support. Yet please don't have the expectation that, okay, they're going to take them and place them in a clinic or hospital for a while and move from there. Even if that situation does happen, there still needs to be a follow-up plan. And that's where I want to go to later on into the present. But right now I want to go to the next slide, please. If what happens with yourself. And so we can go to the next slide. Thanks. So the present thing, what Tacoma Fire offers is called the CARES program. And the Tacoma Fire Department CARES program has a connection with the TRT. And so, and that is familiar with each other. Laura Morris is the director for that program. And so what happens here is what you can, you have the information this will be given to you, but just briefly is that if EMS is called several times, for instance, to the same home or same area where a person with mental illness is suffering, having some ongoing issues, they'll make a record of that. And with permission of the caregivers or even the person themselves, they'll ask if they would like additional support or care. And that comes from the FD Cares program, which is part of Tacoma Fire. This is not, hey, they're going to come and give you counseling on site. This is not, they're going to provide any kind of financial assistance, them personally or the department. It's a resource that what happens is they will match the person with whatever insurance or things that they can try to help them with, and or what they're on. If it's, especially if it's something that they're, let's say they're a senior adult and working with their insurance so that things don't get out of hand expense-wise. They're very good at finding ways of helping people to get the support they need. They will also set up appointments and encourage people to attend the doctor appointments and things. Once again, FD Cares does not come physically to the home or to the place where the person is at and take them there. They can arrange or help do stuff like that. But basically, as it says, they collaborate with community partners for healthcare and social services, and to connect at the right time. Once again, the individual who is receiving the services, if they are able to make their own decisions and do stuff, it is up to them to get to the appointments, to get to the place on time, and to follow through on that. And so that's where you're feeling maybe, what do I do? And I'm feel stuck and just overwhelmed by trying to care for someone like this. If it happens regularly, calling 911, different things, FD Cares is a good support, and they can be a support to you to help in areas where you're might not be familiar with or don't know or don't have the resources. They can help you very much to come in and to take care, to show here's the resources and here's where you can get the individual either you're caring for or someone you know. So that's just kind of talking about the immediate and present. I just want to pause here, going back to what if it's yourself? What if it's you that's going through the situation, which this is for also as a resource, is call 911 and for them to come. If you're suffering from some, hey, I feel, yourself, you're your own advocate, you feel that something is not right, something's going wrong, you'll call 911 and support will come, and the medics, the people who will come there to be there with you, will provide care and support. Because there's times when during mental illness, or even when we're physically sick, that we can't make decisions for ourselves, but we know something's wrong. And so that's a good way of support, especially if you're feeling endangering of yourself or to others, is go ahead and make that call. A lot of people, once again, think, well, I'm going to get in trouble or different things. It's people coming to support you. Oftentimes too, you may want to reach out to a counselor, or you may want to reach out to some of the mental health resources I'm going to share with you. When you receive a message on the phone, it's going to say, if this is a medical or mental health emergency, dial 911. Most of the things are going to share that. Even the crisis line is going to say that. And so that's just some things that if something immediate is going on that you see in someone that you're caring for or yourself, is 911. And these are some resources that help immediately. But just please be aware of the system we're in right now, is that there may not be beds available, for instance. There may not be a place, and people will try and help as much as they can. And so just be patient, but it's good resource. And this, once again, is the immediate help in case of a crisis happens in mental health. So now at present, I talked about the FD Cares program, and just a little bit more on them is they have resources. Yet it has to be through someone being called periodically that the first responders are coming to their home or their place where they're at. And that way then either requested or the first responder will call first in regards to FD care. So if you're on a scene and it's someone that's frequently dealing with mental illness issues, you can talk to first responders about the FD cares program. Okay, let's go on. And so deal with the present. So the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is so Beacon Hill is, as it says up there, is the health officer became the behavioral health administrator for service organizations. That means that the funding and stuff that comes through Pierce County, they distribute. And so if we could go ahead and play the video right now.
If you or a loved one are in need of immediate help for a mental health or substance use disorder crisis, you may not know where to turn. You may feel all alone. You might be so desperate that you go to a hospital emergency department for help. But here's something that may surprise you. Caring behavioral health clinicians are available right in your community. You don't have to go through the stress and inconvenience of going to the hospital emergency department to get the care you need. In Pierce County, you have access to our crisis line and mobile crisis teams. We're available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, including holidays. Just one phone call from the comfort of your home or wherever you are provides direct access to behavioral health clinicians and peers who really listen to what you're going through. We are experts in connecting you to the exact type of care you need, up to and including inpatient hospitalization if necessary. When you call, a team member may come to meet you right where you are, in your home, a provider's office, or another location in the community. We can even do a phone or video visit with you. Most of the time, we can do this within an hour of your call, so you can access the supports you need, including help in a crisis, without going to the hospital emergency department. We also provide direct referrals to mental health counseling, substance use services, and other community resources available to you. We are your local crisis team, and we offer a personalized, non-judgmental, and coordinated approach to care that you can access quickly. Call us to get the help you or your loved one needs, right when you need it. When you call, we'll be here.
Thank you for that. We can go back to the slides. While we're going back to the slides, I'm sharing with you that what I'm showing you are resources that are not immediate, but
it's not the same diet that you're following and the same training plan that you try.
The truth is that Hollywood's elite actors can get ripped while adding 12, 15, even 20
that's not me.
in just a few weeks because they follow a long forgotten and
So anyway, I'm not sure what that was, but anyway, that's a Beacon Hill media. And the next one I'd like to show you is information on NAMI. If we can bring that slide up, please. And once again, while I'm trying to bring that up, thank you. So the next, yeah, there we go. So once again, I'm going to show another video and explain about NAMI. So these two resources are for present, not if there's an emergency. So if we show the next video, please. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Kendall and I'm here to share with you why NAMI is so awesome and why I love NAMI, and that's because NAMI is a family.
For one, with NAMI I feel safe. This is a place where I have been able to be completely open and honest about the things that I'm going through, the things that have affected my family.
Ever since finding NAMI, I felt like there is somewhere I can go and people I can turn to when I need support.
I was not alone, and it definitely helped to know that I wasn't alone.
The thing about NAMI is that everybody understands.
NAMI provides a caring, supportive, and compassionate experience for all of us who need it.
Me, NAMI is where I belong. It's where I feel a sense of community, and there's people I can trust.
It's a community where everyone is loving, caring, and everyone is concerned about the well-being of everyone involved.
And that's why I love NAMI.
So bringing that up, you have two resources, Beacon Hill and NAMI, National Alliance Mental Illness, and the videos and information and the slides will be included for you to make contact with them. Just sharing with you that, once again, everyone is going through things, and with both the organizations that showed you really tried, you're thinking, well, the costs, their insurance, both these organizations shared with you that are in Pierce County, and you have the contact information for them. They are going to be very helpful to you. And once again, if this is during, like right now, when you're thinking, hey, I need some more support, you can make choices on yourself. We don't want to wait until the crisis with someone we're caring for or ourselves just blows up. We want to try and get the more support. I know it sounds like a broken record. The more support you have, the better. And I'm seeing some questions pop up. The phone number and stuff should be on their website. So other ongoing resources, I want to just pause here. What I mean by ongoing is follow-up, a weak area really in crisis intervention and mental illness, to become healthy in our mindset is follow-up. People think, well, if I go to a treatment center for a little bit, or I am in some sessions for a little bit, once that's done, then I'm all right. Or even the treatment centers will say, well, you need to have follow-up, and they'll try and help you get counselors and to do that for ongoing follow-up. That gets dropped a lot. And so what I want to share with you is these resources that I'm giving you are helpful, that there's a lot of resources in Pierce County to help with groups with either drug or alcohol abuse and different things. And so what I want to pause to here and share with you is just on grief itself. And if you are looking for resources for help in grief, because like Samantha showed the survey where many people said, yes, I've lost a loved one during this time, or someone close or a personal friend, excuse me, that grief is real. You want to deal with that. A real good resource, and I'll give you two good resources, is one is many faith groups have a grief resource called Grief Share. And your local church or synagogue, you can contact them or get on the National Grief Share website, and they will share with you where to go to the local Grief Share group, and that's free. Many churches and synagogues have those. Another resource is, and I don't have this up, I'm sorry, but I'll make sure that it can be presented or put on the chat group. If you type in your search engine, Pierce Metro bereavement groups, Pierce Metro Grievement Group, it'll bring up a list of many, from survivors of suicide, just a lot of groups. And so sharing that with you, using that's a large list. I cannot guarantee that you call every one of those that you're going to have an answer or get contacted back, but it's a good place to start. These other ongoing resources you have is Metropolitan Development, and look at that. That's their website there, ndc-hope.org. Survivors of suicide. You see all these that are listed, and also in any of our public libraries, you go in. There's a yellow booklet. It's called Where to Turn, and if you pick up that yellow booklet and look at that, there's once again, it's mainly for seniors, but a whole lot of resources that are available to help during times of crisis and different things. So just wanted to share these resources with you. I cannot convey enough that if something immediate or urgent is going on, please dial 911. They'll take care of you. My hope is that in presenting resources and stuff today with you is that it's not something that we wait for, that we can put stuff in place and have the support we need before things get out of hand. If I can be of assistance to you, please contact me. I believe my contact information will be presented during on the panel time, or when we're talking, or at the end of during the presentation that's recorded. But so those are the resources, and just have a few more minutes before my 30 minutes is done. Just for time for questions, if that's all right.
Okay, so you want to ask the one question?
Okay, so there was one question. When will we have mental health counselors paired with EMS or police to attend when needed to these calls? And this was during when you were talking about the immediate calls.
You bet. So my answer to that is I don't know, but there are things in process. And so that I would share that the need is urgent. And so there are programs in the works to have behavioral health or behavioral health crisis teams. Right now, so within EMS, right now, Multicare has a mobile unit. And so that you call the Pierce County Crisis Line, that unit available through Multicare, they can send that out if needed. But once again, I'm not sure if the crisis line, if it's appointment or if it's an immediate, I'm not sure on that. But the urgent need is there. And so the things are I know are in works, process of doing that because the need's there, but not sure when that's going to be rolled out.
Thank you so much, Russ. Just wanted to let people know we did upload the links to the Beacon Hill, so the contact information and the contact information for the Naomi, and also the PDF link to the bereavement is also in the chat.
Thank you for doing that.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Peters, for sharing your vast knowledge on the community resources with us this morning. It is now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Cheryl Hart, our keynote speaker.
Hi, everyone. I'm here today. I've been asked to come here today.
Oh,
are we good?
Just want to make sure you're here on camera. So I just wanted to introduce Dr. Hart. Dr. Hart is a clinical psychologist with 17 years of specialty in treatment with anxiety, 14 years in specialty with PTSD treatment with using EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Kind of a big word there. 12 years of experience working with labor and industry. 2 years of counseling with the federally disability determination system, and she has extensive training and professional experience in psychological evaluation and treatment planning with populations ranging from the average basic person to severely and chronically mentally ill patients. She has a year of counseling training in chemical dependency and quite a few years working with various types of first responders in LNI. Dr. Hart primarily sees first responders and LNI patients. Okay, you can take it away now.
Am I good to go? Okay. Hi, everyone. I've been invited here today to talk to you all about some very practical tools to, on a DIY basis, handle and manage emotional distress. So I know that this particular conference is about grief and loss. However, the tools I'm teaching today can be used for any emotion: sadness, jealousy, hurt, disappointment, you name it. It can be used for, these tools I'm talking about today can be used for managing any emotional experiences you might be having. I have submitted a packet of information and handouts that if you don't have them already, they will be handed out at the end. So when we get to the tactics and the how-tos and how to do these things, don't worry about writing it down. It's all in the packets. So I'm going to start with a metaphor. So let's imagine you're walking through life, got a little backpack on, and you're just walking through your life, right? And then from time to time, life throws a trauma at you. Life throws something upsetting, something that rocks your world in a really unpleasant way. It could be grief, it could be loss, it could be an assault, it could be a loss of a job, it could be anything unpleasant. And let's, for the sake of our metaphor, imagine that it comes to you in the form of an apple, right? This little trauma apple. Now you got to figure out what to do with this apple, right? You got to figure out what to do with this traumatic thing that's coming at you and causing you to be uncomfortable. And most of us rely on what society has taught us to do, which is really the worst way to do it. Society's messaging is consistently to don't have feelings about it, be professional, don't be a baby, don't cry like a little girl. You know, all the messagings all of us have heard that basically send us the message, it's not okay to be upset. It's not okay to feel a feeling. And so the additional messaging, the downstream effect of that messaging is hide it, avoid it, deny it, pretend it's not happening, right? So that is what we are taught to do from birth. And so what most of us tend to do is we have this apple and we're walking down the path and we're like, well, I gotta not feel this yucky stuff. And although I am kind of feeling it, I have to pretend that I'm not. I'm just gonna shove it in the backpack. I'm gonna stick this apple in the backpack and leave it alone. And then you're walking down the path of life, lugging this thing on your back. And another traumatic thing happens. I don't know about you guys, but most people have more than one apple hit them in their lifetime. Like, life is a stressful place to be. And so we're getting bombarded with apples all the time. Some apples are bigger than others. That's true. Some apples are Godzilla-sized. That's true. But we're getting a lot of apples coming at us all the time. Most of us become very good at shoving the apples in the backpack, pretending we're not having any emotional distress at all. Nope, I'm good. How are you doing today? I'm fine. You know, that one. So most of us get very good at denying and pretending. And over time, that actually creates almost a phobia of feeling feelings. And it also creates a great difficulty. And you're not skilled. You don't have any skills or tools in how to deal with emotions because your only tactic is to throw it in the backpack and pretend it's not there. Okay, now let's be clear. I'm not against backpacking your emotional distress, right? I think it's a really good tactic if you're someone like a first responder and you're a cop and you have to go into a firefight to go rescue somebody, right? That's really good to not be terrified of losing your life in a legitimately life-threatening situation. So you have to the cops have to pack that emotion away, shove it in a backpack to go do their job. firefighters, same, all of us, the same. There are times we just got to pack it away to get the job done, but that's a short-term strategy and it's good for short-term. The problem becomes when you chronically do it to the point that you don't really do anything else. And the avoidance that happens, the avoidance behaviors take various forms when you're chronically doing this. They take the form of addictions, chemical dependency, porn addiction, sex addiction, being aggressive and nasty to other people, like being hostile, like directing all your attention outward because it takes your attention away from you. What else does it lead to? It leads to, well, you know, all the negative things that people get into because they're hurting inside, but that rather than dealing with it, they're, you know, they're putting that into certain behaviors. I'm sure you all can think of a couple of things. One thing that's pro-social, people, it looks good on the surface, is overworking, like this excessive hyperworking. Takes your attention away from all the apples in the backpack. So, okay, so downside of backpacking, all the things I just said. Upside of backpacking, you could do a short-term job. Now, I'm going to propose that we choose a different strategy today. I'm going to lay out some strategies that are from a completely different approach. I propose that instead of trying to wall off our emotions, stick them in a backpack, hide them, like not deal with them, I propose that we face them. Like the apple comes at you, you're like, oh, this sucks. You know, I got an apple here. I got a trauma apple or a grief apple. It really sucks. And you face it, you feel it, take a bite of the apple, chew, 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 digest it, extract from it the lessons you need to learn, make the changes you need to make, move it through your system. And you know what happens? It moves out of the system and it's gone. By the time you're done eating that apple, you got nothing in your hands, and you got nothing in your backpack. You're clean and you go on with your life and you catch the next apple, face it, feel and deal, right? You feel with it, you deal with it, and you move it on and you're done. So I will say, I forgot to tell you one really bad thing about putting all the apples in the backpack. The apples, it's not the cone of silence in there, right? It's not quiet. Those apples, at the risk of using too many metaphors at the same time, those apples are like little radio towers in your backpack, and they're sending out messages. And each apple is sending out messages and feelings and emotions that are related to the experience you went through. So if you've got you probably got apples back there telling you how worthless you are. You've got apples back there telling you that you're in danger. Life is dangerous. People, you can't trust people. You know, all the apples are broadcasting all the time. And to be honest, you can tolerate that. Your system, if you're resilient and you're well fed and well rested and all these factors are in play, you can kind of suppress and ignore all the simultaneous broadcasts of those apples on the surface, but they're still influencing you. They influence the way you think about yourself. They influence your self-esteem. They influence how you deal with people in the world and how you deal with your life. So the problem with loading up your backpack is the backpack rips sometimes, right? You got all these apples, they're all broadcasting. The backpack rips, and now you've got apples all over the place. They're all broadcasting. You're covered in applesauce. It's a total train wreck. And you're feeling a bunch of feelings that you have zero skills to handle because your only skill is to shove things in the backpack. But now the whole bottom is falling out of your backpack. And so that's where I tend to see people where they show up in my therapy office because like their mental health is all over the place. So my suggestions to you today, my pitch to you guys today is to feel, deal, and heal. Like feel the feelings, deal with the feelings, move them through your system and heal from them. So I'm going to propose a different model for emotion management to you guys. The model that society gives us is deny, pretend, wall it off, put it in a box, shove it down deep inside somewhere and pretend it's not there. I propose we look at emotional processing a little bit like a pipeline, right? Imagine that we have a pipeline in our body. Your mouth, food comes in, stuff moves all the way through, and then it moves out and it's gone, right? So I don't know why our emotional system can't be like a pipeline, right? Why not? So what happens is emotions come up, you feel them, you deal with them, and then they move on through and you're healed from them. Feel, deal, heal. So some of the messaging that people get around emotions is you're kind of weird or defective if you have emotions, which is really weird and defective thing to say because neuroscientists have proven at this point that there are actual parts of your brain. There's pieces, there's stuff in here. I'm not a neuroscience, not scientist, obviously, but there's actual parts of the brain and pathways in the brain that their function, their job is to create certain emotions. And so there's multiple of them, and then they blend in certain ways to create other emotions. And like there are actual brain parts whose job is to produce emotions. And so what that tells me is normal, right? And as long as my brain's working, it's going to be producing emotions. Okay, that's good to know. That means I need to learn to do something about them rather than trying to like pretend it's not happening. It's actually in, I'm hardwired for it. Okay, so my proposal is to do the pipeline. So when their brain produces the emotions, they're going to come up and you could just move them on through. Okay. And I'm also going to recommend doing them in bite-sized pieces. When you get your trauma apple, you eat it in bite-sized pieces. You don't try to shove the whole apple down your gullet and you know, that's too much, right? So I'm going to teach you some tools to bite-sized piece these things. Okay. I'm going to teach you 3 approaches. I'm going to propose you do 3 approaches. One is emotional pipeline clearing. So when emotions naturally are produced in your brain, they come up through your emotional pipeline. I'm going to teach you some pipeline clearing strategies to get that out of your line. The next thing I'm going to do is talk to you just a little bit about thought management. One thing that the psychology world discovered back in, gosh, the late 1960s, I think it was 1968, it was a long time ago. We've known for 50 years now that thoughts cause feelings. It's not even in question. We know that for a fact. So if you have thoughts that are kind of renegade thoughts, false thoughts, really drama mama thoughts, they're going to make you have emotions. I'll tell you the secret. Well, we'll get into the emotional stuff in a minute. So I'm going to teach you emotional clearing stuff, clearing the pipeline, thought management, because it does no good to clear your pipeline if your thoughts are just running amok, creating more emotions that keep filling the pipeline again. So we're going to teach you how to clear the pipeline and to stop unnecessarily putting emotional garbage in the pipeline. And the other thing is I'm going to teach you some tools to handle the body, like the neurology, the blood oxygen level. There are certain things biologically that really can help calm you down. And then when you get all worked up, they get out of whack. And I'm going to teach you some ways to kind of settle those things down. That's what we're doing today. I'm going to start with, I'm rushing because there's so much to talk about. I apologize for that. We're going to start with the 0 to 10 scale. So when people are upset and they're dealing with stressors, they can deal with the 10% level severity stress, or they can be dealing with 100% severity stress, right? You all know this, stress is on a spectrum, right? And so I'm going to teach you tools today for the lower end of the spectrum and for the high end of the spectrum, like the 8, 9, 10 level, right? Because I'm going to start with 8, 9, 10 level because that's the level everyone's terrified of. Oh my God, what if it's out of control? I can't handle it. You know, that more of that stinking thinking that causes fear and builds your pipeline. But anyway, we're going to start with the 8, 9, or 10s so that you know that you can handle the worst of it. Okay. The 8, 9, or 10 strategies, I like to think of them as a Heimlich maneuver, right? You know, you're eating your trauma apple and then a piece of this emotional distress gets stuck in your throat and it's stuck. You can't get it up, you can't get it down. And you feel like, oh my God, this sadness is going to kill me, or oh my God, my anxiety, it just feels completely and totally overwhelming. So these tools just Heimlich that piece that's stuck out. And then you can go use the other tools, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes, for the lower intensity strategies. Okay, so let's do the heavy duty stuff. One thing I want to talk to you about for handling high intensity emotions is body positioning, right? God, I'm going to do another metaphor. I am metaphor lady today. If you can imagine a water hose being your emotional pipeline, right? And the water is the emotion. And so you're standing out in the yard with your water hose, and your family member, whatever, turns on the hose on the other side of the house. Hey, I just turned the water on. Okay, you know it's coming. You feel the emotions coming, and you know what's going to happen. Emotional water is going to be flying out of your emotional pipeline. Really messing with this metaphor here. And so what the good thing to do, like the smart thing to do to just get all that water out of the pipeline, I know what you know this. You just stand there and hold the hose and let the water get out of the pipeline, right? Get out of the water hose. What we tend to do, what society teaches us to do, is to be phobic and terrified of emotions and to shut them down. Don't feel anything. Don't show any tears. Whatever you do, pretend you're not crying. Pretend you have allergies. And so what we do with our water hose, when the emotion's inbound, and you all know when it's time to cry, here it comes. It's coming. I can feel it. We kink the hose. We bend the hose in half, and we stop our emotions from coming out. So let me ask you, when you're out in your yard and you're watering the hoses and you bend the hose in half and kink it so no water can come out, what happens to the system? The hose gets really tight. I have a really messed up water hose situation at my house. So what happens when I kink the hose is down at the spigot, the water starts flying out everywhere. The whole side of the house gets wet. It's a disaster. And then if you have an old hose, it can blow a little hole, like a little leak can happen. And then you get all these spouts on your water hose line that are spraying water / emotions all over the yard. So the same thing happens emotionally. When you have emotional water trying to leave, it's trying to get out, and you kink the line, it's going to put a lot of emotional pressure. It's going to intensify the unpleasantness of the emotions that you're feeling. And it's going to make you're going to feel worse. You're going to have much more dramatic feelings than if you just left the water hose open, didn't kink it, just let him come out, just feel him and let him come out. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this in just a second. So that's my proposal. Don't kink the hose. You're just making everything worse when you do that. So here's how people kink their hoses. And you've seen this, like when people start to cry, the first thing they do is they start touching their face, right? Like they start, or they'll cover. They also will close their eyes. So they close their eyes or they cover. Another thing they'll do is they'll look down. So they'll look towards their lap or towards the floor. They'll close their eyes and cover. And oftentimes the head goes down and the whole body kind of hunches over. So there's this whole postural change that takes place when someone's having a lot of distress. Head down, eyes down, hands up in your face and your eyes closed. Any of those 4 things will absolutely and unnecessarily make the feelings that you're feeling larger and more horrible. The opposite is what you need to do when you're feeling the emotional wave coming through, or you're really just stressing out and you're in it. You ever heard that British saying, chin up, chin up? I think they're onto something, right? So you keep your chin up, and if you can imagine drawing a line from your nose to the horizon, and you keep your eyes, like what you're looking at, above that line. So you look at the ceiling, you look at the sky, you look at the wall over there, but you keep your eyes up. You do not look down at all, because you're going to feel worse the moment you look below your nose. So chin up, eyes up, and then when you're first starting out at this, sit on your hands, like sit on them. Do not touch your face. Yeah, you're going to cry. Who cares? Like your face will get wet. Who cares? It gets wet in the shower. It doesn't cause any problems. It's okay. So let your face get wet. Keep that chin up. Keep your eyes up and keep doing whatever you're doing. Like if you're doing dishes, do your dishes. If you're talking to your friend, talk to your friend. Like just keep going. And what happens is the wave hits and then it moves through. It's like a summer storms here last a long time. But in Florida, where I grew up, a summer storm would come in, it would blow up for 5 minutes and it would be gone. So it's like a summer storm in Florida, right? It comes in, you cry, and then it's gone and the sun comes back out. That's really what happens if you can chin up, eyes up, hands away from the face, keep your eyes open. That it'll just move through your pipeline rather than you kinking the line and keeping all that stuff inside you. That's strategy 1. Now, strategy 1 is like a clearing the pipeline management strategy. Strategy 2 is a body management strategy. When people get upset, they will often underbreathe or even hold their breath, right? And so then the body goes into oxygen deprivation mode. All the cells and tissues, which rely on oxygen to properly function, they start freaking out because they can't do their jobs, right? Your whole biological system goes into a little biological freak out because you're not breathing right. You're not breathing deep enough, or you're just not breathing. You're holding your breath. Like a lot of people who get anxious are breath holders, and it just makes everything worse. So Under breathing makes whatever you're facing more awful because it increases anxiety and it shuts your your biological system down, which influences your thinking, makes you more prone to anxious thoughts, and which makes more emotions go into the pipeline. And now you have to clear more stuff from your emotional pipeline. So you got to do some breathing. Now, I Googled breathing for relaxation once, and there were like 2 billion Google hits, right? So I'm thinking there's a lot of different ways to breathe to settle your system down. And I don't really have a problem with any of them, but I'm teaching one that's super duper easy. So when you are flipping out and you can't even remember how to spell your name because you're so worked up, okay, you're going to remember how to do this tool. So let's do, I'm going to tell you, and then we'll do a little brief practice together. You do 4 things for the count of 4. You breathe in for the count of 4. Let's do it together. Then you hold your breath for 4. Then you gently blow it out. 3, 4. And then you just sit there and do nothing for 4. Don't look around, don't move, don't do anything. Just sit there. And then you do it again. Breathe in. 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, and out. 3, 4. Now rest, do nothing, sit there and in. Hold and out. And rest. 3, 4. And you just do that over and over until you feel better. I would recommend doing that if you're in a stressful situation, or if you're at the hospital getting bad news, you're in this surgical waiting room waiting. I would recommend breathing the whole time. Like when you're in a stressful scene, your body just malfunctions in the direction of under breathing when you're stressed out. So if we know that that's going to happen, we can counteract it by breathing regularly the whole time we're in stressful situations, after stressful situations. So your neurology can settle down. Your nervous system, there's parts of your nervous system that are in charge of fight or flight response and managing, survival. Like if those parts get really activated, we want to calm them down. And breathing is one of the fastest ways to do that. So we've talked about posture, head up, chin up, hands away from the eyes, and keep the eyes open. We talked about breathing. And I am going to talk to you about something else, which I am forgetting right now. Okay. I'm going to give you a little background on this because the next 2 things I teach you are related to the background. Okay, I'm going to say right up front, I'm not a neurologist. I don't know brain stuff, but what I'm about to tell you is based on looking at thousands and thousands and thousands of people in emotional distress. This is what it looks like is happening in the brain. So it seems to me that there are different systems in the brain that all use the same. Okay, I'm going to restart. It seems like there is like a single train track in the brain, and it's used by the emotion management train. It's used by sensory processing train, the feeling, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, your 5 senses. Whenever that stuff's activated, it's using the train track, right? And then the train track is also used by numerical processing, the part of your brain that actually does math or counting, or is actually like figuring math type number stuff out. So whenever, that train track seems to only be able to hold 1 train at a time. So only one of those systems can use that train track at a time, which is really awesome, right? That's why kids who are really stressed out, really being abused, aren't very good at math. They aren't good at math because there's so much emotion running through their train track every day. That's why people who are stressed out don't have a lot of body awareness, and they bump into things and stuff because their sensory processing system is just completely it can't work because all the emotions are clogging up the train track. So what we can do is, if we know this to be true, we can take advantage of this. And when emotions are filling up your train track, we can come in and use sensory processing, or we can use number processing to knock all those trains, those emotional train cars, off the track. And then they just get pushed out of the emotional pipeline. It's really cool. It sounds like, no way is this going to work. You wait till you try it. So the first one I'm going to teach you is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is like the classic old school strategy for using sensory processing to ground yourself. So in the packets that you're getting, there's several versions of this. You can tweak this. This one you can tweak and customize to your preference, right? But the main idea on the sensory processing business is you have to 100% like laser focus on whatever you're seeing, feeling, hearing, smelling, or tasting, right? And it's the laser attention, the laser-like focused attention, which is what forces the emotional processing to take over the train track and to knock all the emotional processing off. So how that might look for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is you do 5 of one sense, 4 of another, 3. So 5 of feeling, touching something, 4 of looking at something real close, 3 of smelling, 2 of hearing. And I don't remember what the last one was, but or you could do 5 of touching, 4 of smelling, whatever order you want. Like you can customize this. So, but when you do it, like I'm gonna pick my eraser thing. So I'm gonna look at this, right? So if I were doing this, I wouldn't just be like, yeah, eraser and throw it aside. No. Laser attention. I will zoom my attention in on this thing and I will look at it in ways that I've never looked at it before. I'll find the little blemishes, the little cracks. I'll look at this crazy gear that I never even noticed was there, right? I will notice colors or things. Like you really, when you are looking, like get your attention. And then go pick the next thing. Like here's a jar. So I'm gonna really look at this jar and then you just do 5 of those. And then you do 4 of touching. So you would, and when you touch it, you put 100% of your attention into your fingertips. And like, so if I'm touching my glass, I would be like really in an intense way feeling the side of the glass. And then you just do 5 of one sense, 4 of another, 3 of another, and so on. Usually by the time you get down to 2 or 1, you're done. Like if you feel better, right? You feel the Heimlich has been performed, apples out, and you're like, okay, I'm more stable. Sometimes you need to do it a second round or a third round. Usually that's really rare, but if you need to do it a second or third round, whatever, do it a second or third round. Okay, so that sensory processing will knock the emotional train cars off the train track and out of the pipeline, which is great. It will drop your numbers from 8, 9, or 10 down to 3, 4, or 5 fairly quickly within a couple, a minute, 2 minutes, like it doesn't take too long. The next thing I want to teach you about is how to capitalize on the number processing part of your brain. So you do that by doing math in your head, or you can count things. Now I want to be super clear with you. Listen up, this is important. Those of you who are math phobic are like, oh my God, I can't handle numbers. This is not math class. There is no math teacher with a red magic marker like grading your answers. The point of this exercise is to activate, it's over here, a part of your brain that does numerical processing. Turn that light switch on in your brain and get it going, because that will knock the emotions out of your system. It doesn't matter if this thing is right or wrong when it's working, it just matters that it's working. And that's what will move the emotions out of your system. So you could do any kind of math. You could do 3 + 4 + 5, 12 + 13. What is that? 25. 25 + 13, what is that? 38. + 13 is, okay, whatever it is. You just keep adding numbers or subtracting numbers, or you could do a times table. Like sometimes I'll just sit and do the 7 times table because I find that one a little hard. 7, 14, 28, 35. And you just keep going until you're at 7 times 17, 7 times 18. And honestly, the harder your little math brain has to work, the faster the emotions are kicked off the train track, right? So it would benefit you to just go straight to the hard ones and really like, oh, carry the 1 and, and make your math brain work. And you can stop when you're like, okay, I'm totally focused on these numbers. That's a sign that, okay, if you're totally focused on the numbers, the line has been cleared and you can go check on whatever, think about whatever it was that was bothering you before and see 0 to 10, how much it bothers you now. And if it's outside of the 8, 9, or 10 window, you can go use some other tool, right? Because you've Heimlicked out the 8, 9, or 10, it's gone. Now you can use some other tool to get it the rest of the way out. Okay, posture, hands, breathe, clear the train track with numbers or sensory processing. And now we're gonna do a tactic to, and this tactic you should use all the time, like whether you're a little upset or a lot upset, this one's important. This is thought management. Like I said before, we know that wackadoo thoughts will cause us to have unpleasant feelings. And the wackadoo thoughts take the form of lies, right? Our brains manufacture junk, like they make things up. And then it's like a double-decker lie. We make up lies. I can't deal with this. This is the worst thing in the world. No one should have to deal with this. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to end up poor in the gutter alone. No one will ever talk to me again. Like all of that's made up. All of that's, I call it drama mama thinking. It's like going drama mama with your thinking. And so you go drama mama with your thoughts, you make up a bunch of junk that just ain't true. And then that's a double-decker lie, because then you decide that you decide to believe the stuff you just made up, right? And it's like, you just made that up, but now you're going to tell me that's true. So when you get these double-decker lie thoughts going on in your thoughts, it activates those little brain parts that create emotions. And then your emotional pipeline just gets really clogged really fast with more emotional garbage, right? So here's my proposal. You've got whatever, you got a car wreck or whatever's going on that you got to deal with over here. You got to deal with that. It would be nice to not have to also simultaneously deal with all the emotional garbage that you're voluntarily generating up in your brain and filling your pipeline with, right? There's enough stress coming from the car wreck or whatever it is, that the loss or the hospital experience, whatever it is you're having to deal with. There's enough stress there. Why make it worse by running all these double-decker lies through your brain and freaking yourself out? So one way to get that regulated is to do a ton of self-coaching. So when you're sitting in the hospital surgical waiting room, your mind is probably going to really be running. Well, do some self-coaching, right? I got this. Truthful things. Like some people that do this really self-coaching where it's also a lie, but it's a positive lie. It's all good, dude. It's going to work out fine. There's nothing to worry about. Lies, total lies, because no one knows unless they're like world-class psychics or something. Don't lie in happy ways and don't lie in negative ways. Just go right down the middle. Tell the truth to your brain and the brain will just calm down. It's so comforting. So it will be something like, okay, this is a hard situation, but I got this, right? I can take it one step at a time. I know how to do most of this and I can ask for help on the stuff I don't know how to do. And if the people I know don't know how to give me help, I can call and get help from those people that Russ gave us the numbers for. I can handle this and I don't have to handle it all at once. I'm going to remember to breathe. I'm going to have my own back. I'm not going to call myself names and attack myself and be mean to myself about this. I'm going to be my friend. I'm going to get this job done. I'm going to do my breathing now. And so there's so many things you could tell yourself, but it's calming and that will prevent the emotional pipeline from getting additional clogging from your self-inflicted emotions. In the packet, there's a full page handout of different types of things you can say to yourself. You can customize it, make your own. I would really, whenever you're facing any kind of stress, really load up on the self-coaching. The next thing I want to tell you about, I'm not going to tell you about, I'm just going to give you the Google keyword search. I would recommend going to Google and looking up grounding techniques. They are all pretty amazing techniques for Heimliching when you're forgetting the emotional Heimlich maneuver, when you're really overwhelmed and just kind of losing it. Those grounding techniques will help just settle things down and Heimlich the emotions out. So you want to choose a website that looks reputable to you and then just do some education. And I would say too, that you don't want the bomb squad looking in the manuals trying to learn how to do bomb defusings while there's a bomb in front of them. They go do their trainings and they learn how to defuse bombs way before there's an actual bomb situation, right? So I would encourage you to practice these tools, go to Google, start practicing self-coaching yourself before your own personal stress bomb starts going off, like so that you get the hang of it and you can manage it. All right, the next thing I'm going to talk to you about is the lower intensity strategies. Brace yourself, you'll recognize some of them. Posture, hands away from face, do your breathing. And then the next thing I would recommend would be something called finding the difference. There's this crazy thing that the brain does, and it does it for all of us. It's just part of our wiring. if you're facing something that's similar to something you faced before, your brain's like, oh, I recognize this, and it'll stick them together, right? And then when you've got them stuck together, it can really create some emotional distress. Now, I'll tell you an example. I work with a ton of firefighters, and firefighters will have a kid at home, like a 3 or 4-year-old at home, and they'll go on a call to deal with a kid who's something really, really awful has happened. And so their brain's like, oh, little kid, okay. And then that firefighter's brain will stick these 2 little kid stories together. And then when things are stuck together, they kind of mush together, and you feel feelings from one when you're thinking about the other, and you get them confused, right? You have feelings like your kid was just in a massive car accident, but your kid never was in a car accident. It gets very emotionally confusing, and it's because the brain has smushed them together in the same container. The really cool thing is the moment your brain unhooks these and separates them and gives them their own containers, all of that tension and distress goes away. I have had firefighters who have been in the career for 30, one guy was 35 years. Their children were in their 30s, right? But they were still having PTSD caused in part by some experiences back when their kids were little kids, and they went on calls with little kids, and their brain had done this thing, and they were carrying that trauma in their Apple backpack for 35 years, and it was sending messages. Kids are in danger. You can't, no one's safe. All that messaging was influencing them for 35 years. So the good news is it's super easy to inspire the brain to like unhook these things. Let me tell you how it works. Your brain wants things to be logical. It wants things to make sense, right? So all you have to do is give it data about how these 2 things that it's stuck together are actually different. And your brain will be like, oh, yeah, they don't go together at all. And it will immediately separate them into 2 separate containers. And the moment it does that, there's a relief. Like for me, I almost can feel like a little inside. I feel this feeling of, and I could feel them separating. There's a space inside me. Other people don't report that, but other people report a dramatic and almost instant drop in distress level, like the distress level goes down. I can see when their brain does it, when I'm watching them, when their brain separates it, their shoulders immediately drop. They often take a big deep breath, and their face, the tension that was in their face just kind of softens out and it just goes away. So I would start with, when you're facing a stressful thing, just do your posture thing so you're not kinking the hose, and do your breathing thing so you're not making things worse. And then just check, am I linking anything? Is my brain linking anything to this situation that might be causing extra distress? And the kinds of things the brain links to current upsetting situations are your loved ones, your Nana, like your grandma, or your kids, or your wife, or it also links to other situations that you've been through that are similar. So firefighters going out to a call on a terrible, horrible motor accident that killed someone, that new experience is going to link to all the other calls that they've been on. It's like Legos. They just stack right up. And then they're all in the backpack, and they're all going off at the same time. And so the person's feeling the feelings from the whole stack of emotions or experiences at the same time. It can be very overwhelming. So family members, experiences you've had before, or you. So for example, if my dog keeps getting out and running around the neighborhood, right? It's not happening. I have little dogs, I can control them. Well, not really, but if your dog keeps running out, and your brain might interpret that as abandonment. This dog's running away from me. And if your parent abandoned you as a child, you can link, oh, this dog's abandoning me, just like my family abandoned me. And that may happen in the background of your mind, right? But you're having these large dramatic reactions, and you're like, why am I reacting so bad to the dog running away? And it's because your brain has linked them. So look for the links. And the way you do it is you just lay out differences. My kid is 3 years old. This kid on this call is 4. My kid has brown hair. This kid has blonde hair. My kid lives on Oak Street. This kid lives on Pine Street. My kid's dad is a firefighter. I don't even know what this kid's dad does. And usually it takes 3 or 4. And then the brain's like, oh yeah, these are different, and breaks them. You might need to do 5 or 6. Just keep going until you feel like, oh yeah, these are different. And at that point, the tension and distress is usually gone or dramatically reduced. The next thing I want to teach you is a tactic called feeling it through. This is a tactic where you clear, it's a clearing the pipeline tactic where you actually are eating the apple, chewing, and moving it through your system. I'm going to say something that's going to be shocking. All you have to do to get rid of a feeling is to face it and feel it, but simply feel it. Don't feel it and think about it. Don't combine it with other mental activity. Just feel the dang feeling, openly, willingly feel it. And what that almost functions like a laser that evaporates the feeling. And what happens within a second or two is the feeling will either go away entirely or convert. More often than not, it converts to a different feeling. It's usually a less intense feeling. So, and then you feel the new feeling until it's gone, and then you feel the next feeling. When I do this, it almost feels like, remember in elementary school where everyone had to stand in line all the time? It's almost like the emotions line up and you feel the one in front of you, it's gone, and you feel the next one, it's gone. You just keep feeling your way down the emotional line until you get to 2 or 3 positive ones. And when you get to 2 or 3 positive feelings in a row, then you go back and check the thing that was bothering you and see how upsetting it is now, 0 to 10. If it's more than a 0, find the loudest feeling in that pile and start feeling that. Okay, all right, I'm still mad. Okay, feel mad. Okay, that's gone. And now I'm disappointed. Okay, great, feel the disappointment. Okay, that's gone. Now it's sad. Okay, great, feel the sad, it's gone. And you just kind of feel your way down the stack until the pipeline's cleared. And you can get really awful things out of your system fairly quickly using this tactic. I will say, here's something, caveat. When I was first taught this in school, I could not do it. And I was responsible for doing this and I could not do it. And the reason I could not do it, and I know there's some of you out in the audience who are like me, is my brain is always on. It's always thinking and talking and having opinions. And it's like showing me videos and it's trying to solve problems. It's always like in problem solving mode and blah, blah, blah. But this exercise requires that your brain shut up and that you just feel the feeling, right? You can't do both. It won't work if you do both at the same time. So I've got a workaround that I created to help me do this exercise. I'm going to present it to you. You can do it this way or you tweak it, make it work for you. It uses imagination. It's going to sound weird when I say it, but it totally works. Again, I'm not a neurologist. I think that the imagination part of your brain must be in the same neighborhood as the emotional part of your brain, because we can use so many therapy tactics, uses imagination to influence emotions. So we're going to do that. So what you do to get your brain, your thinky brain under control, is you imagine you're in the space. And for me, it's always my high school basketball court in the gymnasium. I don't know why, but that's where we end up. And then you imagine your thinky part of your brain that's always doing this stuff. You imagine it as a little cartoon character. And so my brain, I'll share it with you, looks like the little brain you see in cartoons with the little wiggly stuff. But he's got these long stick legs with knobby knees, and he's got these long stick arms. And I have a really sullen brain, it turns out. And he stands there with his arms crossed, and he's really short, right? Because he's a brain. And so he's maybe 1.5 feet tall. And so he's looking up at me and he's frowning. And I'm like, hey, brain, I'm here. Me and the feelings are going to be out here on the basketball court, and we're going to be doing this work. And you can't be out here with us. You can watch all you want, but you have to go sit in the bleachers. You cannot be out here. And he'll stomp off and sit in the bleachers. And man, my brain watches, like he wants to be sure everything's going okay. And then you can get out there on the basketball court because your brain's got a job and it's doing it and it's staying out of the way. And you can just do your feeling work. Now, sometimes when you're doing this, you'll be feeling, oh God, there's sadness. I'm feeling sad. Oh, now I'm feeling disappointed. You're feeling all these feelings. And then all of a sudden words start showing up. Opinions like, oh, she shouldn't have done that. This didn't happen. This should never have happened. Like whenever you have like sentences, when you're doing this exercise, that's your brain and it's run out onto the basketball court and it's like trying to play ball with you guys. And so just go time out. Like, brain, all right, knock it off. Get back to the bleachers. And I will say that this is your imagination and you can imagine whatever you want. So everything that you imagine has to happen because you're in charge. So like make your little brain go back to the bleachers. Okay, and that's how I always do that first. Like I don't even try to do this before I send my brain to the bleachers. Now, some of you have additional psychological parts that are really can interfere with this. Like some people have parts that are really hateful, self-hateful. Like they're mean, they're cruel, they're name calling. And when people try to feel feelings, the parts start like being hostily aggressive towards the person. And it makes it really hard to feel any feelings. So if you happen to have a part that's really self-hostile and aggressive, make a cartoon character for that one too. And send it to go sit up by the brain. They can sit together, they can chat together, but they can't be out on the floor with you and their feelings. Some people have a super low self-esteem part that feels like it's so totally powerless, it can't do anything, it's just hopeless and nothing's gonna work. And the part that's just kind of like flattened by life and just completely unmotivated and what's the word, pessimistic. Well, make a cartoon character for that one. Send them up to the bleachers to sit with the brain, and then you and your feelings can be out on that basketball court and feel to your heart's content. Okay, the full instructions are to be found in the handout. And yeah, it's all there. And there's some of the handouts have like ways people go wrong, like mistakes people make with these tools. And so if there's mistakes, common mistakes, they'll be in the handout. I'm going to scooch on to the next thing and do therapeutic journaling. This is not diarying, making a diary. This is not probably what most of you think of when you think about journaling. So I'm going to explain what therapeutic journaling is. Therapeutic journaling can be done. It's a pipeline clearing tool. So it cleans, strips the stuff out of the pipeline. And ultimately, when you're done with it, it reorients the thinking too. So it influences the thinking. So you can do it by typing, texting. You can do it by typing, texting, writing, or you can do it verbally. I do mine verbally because there's no record. I don't have to shred anything. I do mine while I'm on a long commute, or I used to commute after work. I would do mine on the way home, just to dump out the day, all the junk of the day. So what you do, there's some rules to this type of journaling, and they're very important. If you don't do them, it won't work. So the 2 rules are I statements, present time. So what you do is you pick a target, something that bothers you. You figure out how upsetting it is, 0 to 10. I'm 7 out of 10 on this one. Okay, great. And then you start writing or talking and you say I statements, present time. So you think about whatever it is, even if that thing that you're thinking about happened 30 years ago, whatever, think about it now, but then put your feelers down into your feeling part and then start writing about what you're feeling about it right now, what you're thinking about it right now, like your current reactions. Write about that, talk about that, type about that. And just keep going. Just keep going, and you know you're done. It might take 4 pages, it might take 10 pages. Keep going, and you know you're done when you just feel better. You feel like, okay, I got this. What happens is the suffering goes down to 0, and the sense of competence and empowerment over the situation or over yourself in the situation goes way up, right? And so when you feel like, no, I got this, this sucks, but whatever, I can deal with this. And it's just not so exciting. It's a 0 out of 10 on the upsets. Oh, you know you're done. Where people mess up with this one. This is like emotional, pardon my crudeness. It's like emotional vomit, right? You are just like getting it out. You're everything in the pipeline, like it's like a tube of toothpaste. You're just squeezing it all out at the same time. Don't go back and play around in the vomit. So there's a natural thing that happens. Almost everybody wants to do this. If you write it down or type it, the moment you get done, you feel better. You're like, yeah, this is great. I'm done with that. I don't have to worry about that anymore. And then the very next thought is, I wonder what I wrote. Let me go see what I wrote. And then you read it again. And it's almost like dumping the vomit back in. So if you read it, I guarantee you, you'll feel as bad at the end of reading it as you did at the beginning of the whole exercise. So don't do that to yourself. Don't do it. You're trying to get it out. So I would also recommend that you not buy some fancy journal and journal these and keep them on a shelf, and that, like, for you and your descendants to read. This is emotional vomit. You don't want anybody seeing this, including yourself. So don't preserve it. I do mine on the back of scrap paper or junk mail. And I just write it and shred it if I'm at home, or I just do it verbally to really avoid having to deal with the paper. All right, so the other thing I will say where people go wrong is reading it. And then the other one is where they don't do I statements. So if your emotions and distress about your target that you're talking about stay steady for a long period of time, they don't go down, or opposite, they start to climb, you get more and more upset, you're doing something wrong. So you just take a pause, take a breath, go read the instructions, and 99 times out of 100, it's because you're not doing the do's and don'ts. You're focusing, instead of on yourself, you're focusing on other people or the situation or what you usually feel, not what you feel right now, but what you usually feel when this happens. And the past isn't going to change how you, if you focus on the past, it won't change how you feel. If you focus on other people, it will make you feel more upset. And if you focus on the situation, again, it's not going to make you feel better. It'll make you feel more upset. So keep your attention on you in the present time, and it'll clear the pipeline. One more thing. I know I'm running close. I'm probably over. I don't have my clock here. I got one more tool. I'll make it quick. This one is one that cleans up the thinking. This is a thought management tool and tactic. It's a fill in the blank strategy. I can accept, and the truth is, I can accept blank, and the truth is blank. And so what you do is you think about a situation that bothers you, and then you just start saying as many things as you can possibly think of to fill in the blanks. So I don't know, I'm gonna make something up. I don't have a horse, but I'm gonna pretend that I have a horse, and it keeps breaking out of the yard, right? It keeps getting away and going off and living a life, having fun. And so I might say, I can accept that horse is kind of smart and he knows how to figure things out, locks and stuff. I can also accept, and the truth is, I'm not so good about making sure the gate is locked, right? So I can probably accept that I'm probably at fault for this. I can accept, or the truth is, horses are social animals, right? And he's lonely. I can accept, that's the truth. I can accept it, and it's the truth that he's lonely. He's a lonely horse. And the truth is, every time he escapes, he's down the street at his friend's house, like the horse down the street, he's down there. So the truth is, I know where he is. I can accept the horse isn't in trouble. I can accept that I'm not taking care of my horse's social needs. And then, so you just keep doing these, I can accept, and the truth is, and then your brain gets the bigger picture, your perspective shifts, and your emotions drop out. Okay, I think I'm at the end of my time. Final thoughts, face, feel, deal, and to heal, right? Don't avoid and pretend and deny. So, and the best way to do this is to do one of the three styles of, or all of the three styles, to be honest, of strategies: clearing your emotional pipeline, calming your body down, and getting your thoughts regulated so they're not causing more problems. Some people like to stick with one style of tool and use only that style. No, it's just like eating. You have to eat carbs and protein and oil. You have to eat vitamins. So you have to get a little bit of each tactic to get really good resolution on these things. If you have any questions, I'm happy to hang around and answer them. Thank you for your patience with my rapid speech and cramming so much into 1 hour.
Hey, Dr. Hart, you actually have an extra 10 minutes if you wanted to, yeah, an extra 10 minutes. So if anyone has any questions for her, but she has time to go over the material a little bit more.
I usually run 5 minutes over. All my practices have been 5 minutes over. This is fantastic. Yes, bring on the questions. Where do I see them? I'm going to look in the chat for the questions. Is that what we're doing?
There's no questions in the chat yet, but hopefully people will start filling it up.
Okay. All right. I saw your little sign saying time to ask questions. And so I thought you were gonging me, giving me the gong. Maybe no questions. How do you deal with old stuff that comes up in dreams or at night? Okay. So I'm a trauma specialist, so I know about dreams and nightmares, about bad things, right? So when my way of looking at bad dreams and nightmares is the brain is trying to clear the pipeline. It's trying to clear some old emotional stuff out of the pipeline, and it's stuck. And that's how repetitive nightmares happen. Is there's something symbolically represented in this nightmare that your brain is trying to cough out. So it keeps coughing, and the coughing takes the form of nightmares and bad dreams. So what you would need to do is figure out what it is that's inspiring the bad dream. So if you've had a trauma, it's probably something trauma related, or if you're under a tremendous amount of stress, it might be stress related, and you would start working that angle. So you could use these tools on your trauma, or you could go see a counselor to help you navigate the emotional pipeline and self-regulation, emotional and bodily regulation while you work through your trauma. How do you deal with old stuff that comes up to you? Yeah, you got to go to the source. You got to go to the root of it, because your brain is trying. The nightmares are not your enemy. The nightmares are just a natural result of your brain trying to get this stuff out of your system. So then you got to work on getting stuff out of your system. So if you know that you've got 3 or 4 big apples in your backpack that are still festering away back there, sending out radio signals and causing you problems like nightmares and stress and negative thoughts about yourself? Well, write them down on a piece of paper, right? And then just start picking some tools and tactics that we talked about or that you know of from somewhere else to directly hit those past experiences with tools and tactics. And it will reduce the intensity of the influence of these past things. And by doing that, you would be actively helping your brain move whatever that is out of the pipeline, rather than just being like, I don't know what's happening, it just keeps happening. I hope that came close to answering you in a general way. I don't see any more.
There's another one. How can we overcome triggers at work when you need to be productive?
Okay, all right. So I would say that you would want to use the Heimlich maneuver strategies. Like you're at work, you got to shut this down. So I would excuse myself, go get some privacy. I would do some breathing. The bathroom is a great place for this because the door locks and no one can come in. You do your breathing to get oxygen, because if you're triggered at work, you're probably not breathing well at all. You're probably trying to hide your tears. You're probably in this whole hide and avoid cycle. So just like be willing to feel what you feel, do your breathing, and then do some numbers, right? Or do some feel like sit in the bathroom stall and feel the door, or feel the hem of your shirt and see if you can pick out with your fingertips where the thread is, like how many, where are the threads in here? And use your tools to derail the emotional distress that's coming up. You also could do some self-coaching. I got this. This is not the first time this person's been a jerk to me, and it probably won't be the last time. I'm going to use my tools to handle it. And I promise myself that if I need to get a new job, I'm going to not wait around. I'm going to start working on that. And you kind of have your, thoughts of you having your own back. And what else would I do? I would, when I got home, when I got off work and I had some space and time where I could privately deal with this stuff and take 15, 20, 30 minutes to do it, I might journal the hell out of it, journal the heck out of it, right? I might journal it on the way home if it wouldn't interfere with your ability to drive safely. I used to work at a psychiatric hospital where the staff was just awful. And so every day at the end of the day, just like yourself, being stressed out, and on the way home, I would do my numbers. I would do verbal journaling in the car all the way to my house. And by the time I got home, those people in that day and their shenanigans were out of my system. So you can use a combination of these tools to handle stressful work days. And I would recommend, if there's something in your work environment that's causing you problems, that you try to solve it or get out. What are some good approaches to support someone who's suffering from mental illness and doesn't understand the benefits of therapy? I teach firefighters to do this. I would, if your person is really freaking out, just say, hey, hold on. What's 3 + 5? And then when they'll look at you like you're crazy and you're like, no, I'm serious. What's 3 + 5? And they'll give you your answer. What's 7 + 8? And then you just keep giving them little math problems. 10 - 5, 15 - 6, 10 × 2 + 4, 3 + 4 + 5. And what will happen when they're doing their numbers is what we've already talked about. It'll clear the emotional pipeline. All the emotional trains will fall off the track because now math brain is using the train track, right? And they'll realize, I don't know what people say this to me all the time. I don't know what we did right there, but I really feel better. It's like, yeah, I'm using a tool, man. You want me to teach it to you? And the first couple of times they'll say no, but you can trick them into doing it by just stopping them in mid-rant or, hey, what's 3 + 5? And most people will play ball unless there's some serious things going on, but serious mental illness. Most people will play ball with that game. What else you can do is take care of yourself. NAMI I think it was Russ that was talking about NAMI, and NAMI is an exceptional resource that was organization that was developed by family members and loved ones of people who have mental illness. So it was made by family members and loved ones to help them try to figure out this mental illness thing. So I would go to NAMI. If you go to their website, they have support groups. They have support groups and resources for family members and friends. They have support groups and resources for people with the mental illness. There's so much help there. I would start with tricking this person to kind of calm them down with numbers, And then I would go get some support yourself and to help you through that, because that is super duper stressful.
Okay, so we're gonna do the panel now, and I just wanted to reiterate while we're getting the panelists up, the question that Dr. Hart just answered. So what are some good approaches to support someone who is suffering from mental illness and doesn't understand the benefits of therapy, intervention, or addressing it?
So do you have the panel on camera?
We are getting them up on camera.
I would say too, while we're in the process of getting up on camera, something that there are stages of change. You might Google stages of change, and there are different headspaces people are in as they're moving through the change process. And the first one is you don't think you have a problem and you're not even interested in talking about it, right? And then the second one is, I don't know, I'm having some negative consequences, but it can't possibly be related to this, my behavior. And the next one is, okay, maybe it is related to my behavior and I need to do something about it. So to move someone from the first stage to the closer to the second or third stage, just start talking about and focusing on, wow, these consequences are really rough. You keep getting arrested for drug possession. Huh, that must be really hard for you. And just keep pointing out the negative consequences that they're experiencing from untreated mental health illnesses. And at some point their brain will like kick in gear and like, wait a minute, I am having a lot of negative consequences. And that right there is moving closer to the next step of doing something about it.
That's a good point. Heather or Russ, did you want to add anything to that question that I just read, or Josie?
Could you please read it again, Samantha?
Yes. So what are some good approaches to support someone who is suffering from mental illness and doesn't understand the benefits of therapy, intervention, or addressing it?
Well, I think what Dr. Hart says, taking care of yourself, that's a big thing, and have boundaries, because our caring and compassion, sometimes we're not careful, can turn into enabling. And so just watching that, being careful not to enable, and times, like Dr. Hart mentioned about someone getting arrested often. Well, they get arrested, then they're hopefully they'll get placed in a treatment center and stuff. So that's one thing. We're dealing also too. There's people that they can't make decisions because of where they're at in their mental illness and stuff. And so there's times when the hard thing is that, yeah, they need to be transported and moved to an area that can help them and allow that to happen.
I see
Oh, there was another question. How do you help someone who doesn't speak your own language?
I think the get an interpreter answer is pretty obvious on that one, but I expect that there's more to the story and more to the question. Is it whoever asked that, could you give us how an interpreter wouldn't be helpful for that? Or is there more to the question that could help us answer it better for you?
Maybe it was in a moment where there isn't an interpreter available. Like how would you try and communicate with someone if you don't have an interpreter available?
That's a real challenge.
This might be a techie answer, but most phones do have a translating app. And I know we've done it where we've just spoken into, and I don't remember what the app on my phone is, but you speak it in, it translates the text and you hold it up. I mean, I know that's a tech answer, so you have to have your tech with you, but I've had that work pretty well in a couple of situations where an interpreter wouldn't have been available.
Could you please comment on how one loss can recreate the feeling of a prior agreed on loss,
Okay.
if you were to bring it back?
So another question was, how could one loss bring back another greater loss from a later time, and how would that affect the person?
I'll grab that one. It pretty much always does. Loss is cumulative, and so with each loss that we have, it reminds us of our other losses. You know, so there's kind of a thread through our lives. It's important to address all losses, and if you've had, let's just say, a sequence of death-related like losses due to death in a row where you don't have time to tend to the first one before the next one, and sometimes the next one, and the next one happens, then you can wind up in what's called bereavement overload, which feels paralyzing. And the way to address this is to handle tending to each of those, starting with the one, and I haven't found the best way of saying this, but I'll say it this way: the one that challenges your assumptive world the least. You know, so for instance, yeah, I don't even want to give a for instance because then it'll be kind of setting up a hierarchy. But the loss that feels like it's, again, easier to address, I say with a little cringe, than the others. It does need to be addressed, though, each one. And one of the techniques that people use sometimes is just making a timeline of their loss. You know, really look at your loss history and have I acknowledged each of these either through a ritual or just saying like I miss you, or there's a lot of techniques for doing that. I hope that answers, at least starts to answer that question. And by the way, many people are in that boat right now because it's not only the death-related losses, but it's all the assumptive world losses that we have too.
Mm-hmm. It's a really great response, Heather.
And I think that brain linking thing that I was talking about makes what Heather's talking about inevitable, right? If you have untreated or the series of events and you have another one, they're all going to stick together like Legos. And it is easier to treat them individually if you break one off from the pile, right? By doing some finding the difference, and it makes it easier to access them without feeling like you're accessing the entire pile at once.
Oh, Josie put into the comment, the loss history timeline can be really beneficial. It could help you to realize all the big and small losses throughout your lifetime.
I actually just attended, or actually helped facilitate a program up at Omega Institute with Terry Daniel, and she had us go through our loss history timeline, but we also put on it periods of growth, which was really fascinating. I'd never done that before. And it's not, we're not saying like loss is a gift, because that also to me is very cringy, but we do find ways to build that resilience and rise above. And so I think doing those in tandem can be incredibly helpful and also build some hope, because looking at all of your losses on one piece of paper, or actually she had us tie a string and then not each one, it can be overwhelming. And so finding that balance between how this loss affected me and how did I navigate that loss.
That was a really good response. I just wanted to go back to the interpreter situation because someone else responded. So they had someone who spoke another language who was in a car accident, and they were able to successfully get that person to mimic breathing exercises by having them directly look at them and then just copy their physical behaviors to help calm them down. Are there any other questions?
I was just going to add that our body language can really convey a lot of information as well, because if they're anxious or out of sorts and we get caught up in that whirlwind, instead of remaining calm, instead of remaining centered and inviting them into that calm place, it can help them to potentially create a little shift. But we know that if we add to it with our own anxiety and tension and stress, it's not going to help the situation. That's probably an obvious answer, but sometimes I need to be reminded.
That would be a good time, not to keep talking about strategies, but that would be a good time to really kick in gear, defining the difference. If someone in front of you is just really, really worked up and you want to be the place of calm that they can echo and mirror, you got to keep yourself calm. And one way to do that, because this anxiety is contagious, right? You do absorb other people's anxiety and distress. And so one way to keep your brain on track and prevent your brain from absorbing other people's stuff is to just keep a running stream in your head going of, I have gray hair. This person has no hair. I'm wearing glasses. This person's not. Finding the difference between yourself and the person that you're trying to serve or help will help your brain not fuse with them and take on and absorb their emotional distress. So that's a way to do what Josie was saying.
There's another question in the chat. It just asked to explain loss history timeline again, just a little bit more in depth.
So basically, take a piece of paper. For some of us, it needs to be a really big piece of paper. So I usually have like the tabloid paper when I do this in groups, back when groups were live, and you draw a line that represents your life, and you just put little marks along the way of each of the losses, big and small, as Josie reminded us, that happened throughout your timeline. And sometimes some people wind up seeing patterns, but it just really gives you that space to acknowledge what you have been through. It's a really self-compassionate practice, to say this is what I carry. And then again, with the growth piece, you would go through, and maybe with a different color, you would mark, the moments of growth, or the moments where you felt strong.
Yeah, and to add to that, Heather, like some of the things that I added were like big moves when I was a kid, because big moves as a kid for me felt really like a loss. And my pets when they died, or friends when they moved away, things like that we might not necessarily see, or like our parents getting a divorce. I mean, that's the death of a relationship that was known. So adding some of, not necessarily the direct, obvious, deaths of people, but sometimes death of relationships can be added to that.
It's all in the eye of the beholder, right? Like what you call a loss is what you call a loss. It doesn't matter what anybody else says.
Absolutely.
So for some people, it might even be, for me, graduating high school was not a happy thing. It was a huge loss. For someone else, that might have been a joyous time. So it's about you. And again, I see this as a real self-compassionate practice, because it lets you be your own best friend and say, I went through this and it matters. So thanks for saying that, Josie. I think that's an important nuance to this practice.
Are there any other questions that anyone has in the audience? Okay, I don't see any more questions. So we're going to end a little bit early. And I just wanted to thank you all, and thank you to all our presenters for sharing their knowledge with us today. I want to thank the Pierce County Medical Reserve Corps for allowing and supporting us in developing this conference. And a big thank you to our sponsors, the Rainier Olympic Nurses Association, for your contributions in making this conference a reality, and to the Pierce County Department of Emergency Management for supplying the ASL interpreters today. And I just wanted to let you guys know that there's a very short eval form that we will throw down in the chat. And we would really like it if you all just took a few minutes of your time to just complete that, so that way we can get a better idea of how we could do better and what we did well today. Thank you everyone for coming. And the link is now uploaded onto the chat. So. So everyone is free to go. We are going to wait until everyone's off so we can stop the recording and do our wrap up. But thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you all so much. This was wonderful. Thank you for coming and thank you for presenting.
People in.